Yeah, hello again, everybody. We are full team here with you today until midday. Kendall Mahamate, Elvis, very good morning.
Very good morning, Eben. And if you travel today to work, you probably use the taxi the majority of South Africans.
Yeah.
And that is what we're tackling today.
Yeah, the issues of safety, of course. Here in Johannesburg, police are investigating the rapes of several women that were picked up by men in minibus taxis, allegedly. Now, obviously, we're running a poll on this just to see where people are with regards to it.
And that's what we're asking. Is women's safety, or are women's safety in minibus taxis a concern? That's the question we pose to you. So far, 76 votes in. 75% are saying, yes, it is a concern, Eben.
Yeah, it is a concern. Of course, there are other stories of rapes and murders elsewhere in the country on taxis. So it's an escalating problem. We'll speak to the associations, but also to some of our reporters, Elvis, who've been around covering these stories and seeing more and more information, of course, being unearthed.
We'll also bring in our reporter, Griselda, a little bit later to talk about this. But Patrick says, let's be honest. Of the years we have been using taxis, aka minibuses, all around South Africa, we now go on about 1 or 2 drivers out of a million. Well, is that really the concern, Patrick?
Safety in general, Patrick, is the concern. 1 or 2 out of a million, he says. Interesting take. Vuyo comes in, he says, never more than safe. They even drive taxis here in Danzan.
Okay, so those are some of the comments coming through. You can let us know what's on your mind. Do you think really it's a problem, it's a safety concern, especially for women traveling late at night? Yeah.
And of course, we seem to have serial rapes occurring in Johannesburg, which is one of the stories we're tackling, but there's also another one, and we'll get the reporters on those stories in a little bit later to give us a bit more information. But Elvis, the violence in Vuwani is also seemingly escalating. Barricades, we've now seen the first deaths.
The first death last year, as you can recall, 24 schools, more than 24 schools were burned down in Vuwani. Yeah. That is still escalating, and the community is not very happy. So we would like to find out from you. Those were the first 2 deaths. What are your views on this, on the issue there? Let us know what's on your mind.
We've got a couple of tweets that have come in. Let's just have a look at those as you guys are telling us what you think. Judge Soni says, I said, let's get the army involved. Now, look, we lost 2 poor souls. ANC, can you respect the poor? And here are cries. Enough is enough, man, he says. Talking, of course, about the issues in demarcation issues, they say, in Vuwani.
Well, we await your comments on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at our news headlines. Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba begins a multi-city roadshow of the United States in Washington tomorrow, where he will participate in the annual spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The Democratic Alliance has called for disciplinary action against the ousted SABC CEO Claudio Motseneng after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg later this morning. And as you heard our question this morning, 2 people have been burned to death and 1 seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades that were placed on the roads by Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Those are all your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Mahamate what's happening on the sports front.
Gentlemen, good morning to you. Quite a lot happening in the sporting world. We're halfway through the year, and records keep getting smashed, goals keep getting scored, and every now and then we get a bit of a surprise. So quite a lot happening, and very happy to be bringing it to you this morning. Good morning. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
That's Kimmich, and he's going all the way here. Marcelo, and he's given the goal, the hat-trick, and the 100 in the Champions League to Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo nets a hat-trick as Real Madrid go through to the Champions League semi-finals with a 4-2 extra-time win against 10-man Bayern Munich. And Olympic silver medalist Sunette Viljoen can't wait to get going in one of the biggest meets in South African athletics history.
That's why we put on the hashtag in Twitter, #FillUpWatch, to invite the people to come and watch, because the athletics is going to be world-class.
Gets the edge, ball goes down to third man, and there it is. So that's now 10,000 T20 runs for Chris Gayle. What do they call him? The universal boss.
The inimitable Chris Gayle smashes a new record in cricket, becoming the first player to get to 10,000 T20 runs as Royal Challengers Bangalore beat Gujarat Lions in the IPL. All this and more we've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin. Be sure to stick around for it, but do stay with us. Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. And let's start off with the Democratic Alliance that has called for disciplinary action against the ousted SABC COO Hlaudi Motsoeneng, after it emerged that he plans to hold a news briefing this morning here in Johannesburg. Motsoeneng, who has been blamed for the financial mess that the public broadcaster finds itself in, reportedly plans to justify his controversial policies at the SABC. Pumzile van Dam, the Democratic Alliance communication spokesperson, says that Motsoeneng has no business addressing any issues regarding the SABC, as he's no longer an employee of the broadcaster. The party says Motsoeneng should currently be in the middle of a disciplinary inquiry against him. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed support for the new Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba, who is going on an investor trip overseas. The two met in Pretoria on the eve of Gigaba's trip to the World Bank and International Monetary meeting in the United States. They have reiterated South Africa's commitment to inclusive growth, poverty alleviation, and speedy reform of state-owned enterprises. Ramaphosa says the trip forms part of efforts to showcase South Africa to the world.
We're very, very supportive of the minister and his team as they are going to showcase South Africa to the world. And particularly as he's a new minister, this is really great and exciting for us, because the world will be seeing a new minister, the team that has always handled these matters, so it's great.
Two people have been burned to death and one seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades placed on the roads by Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Protesting residents resumed their shutdown yesterday over an unresolved municipal dispute. Police spokesperson Motseng Mwape says that they are investigating a case of culpable homicide. 6 other vehicles were damaged by the protesters yesterday. Police also say they made adequate deployments against protesters engaged in any form of illegal activity. The Hawks have denied bungling the arrest of the renowned prophet Timothy Omotoso. The unit was due to arrest him at an Easter crusade in Bloemfontein on Friday, but it allegedly arrived after he had left. Omotoso, the founder of the Jesus Dominion International Church, is alleged to have sexually abused women congregants from as young as 14 years old. SABC's special assignment aired harrowing accounts of some of the alleged victims.
This charismatic pastor seemingly gone to ground. This as more victims come forward. The prophet is said to have lured them to his upmarket Umhlanga home, slept with them and refused to let them go.
You know, I was very young. I know there are girls who experienced this much younger than I was, but I wasn't mentally capable of understanding.
He took off my pants. I was wearing pants that time. And then when I stopped him, he said, I'm his girlfriend now, so I mustn't worry about anything.
The Hawks were hot on Omotoso's trail. His whereabouts confirmed at this venue for Friday's Easter service, where he was supposed to be apprehended.
We were told by the Hawks that we have to be on standby because there's going to be an arrest of a Nigerian pastor in Bloemfontein. And the Hawks personnel were traveling from the Eastern Cape to Bloemfontein to conduct that arrest. He was here on a Friday. Unfortunately, on Saturday and Sunday, he was not here because seemingly he received a tip-off that he's going to be arrested.
But the elite unit has poured cold water on allegations that they arrived too late.
We cannot always be the one to blame, like what people believe, that we're not there on time or maybe we dragged our feet. No, we were going there on schedule. And we were quite aware that the suspect somehow might not be there because of information that he had. But like I'm saying, our case is very strong and it's very tight. It's not bungled at all.
Police say they are taking statements from more victims and vowed to have Omotoso behind bars before the end of the week. Attempts to contact his lawyer were unsuccessful. Griselda Lewis, SABC News.
Now, we'll do a follow-up story here on the Newsroom next week, Monday, so you don't want to miss it. We'll take parts of the program shared by our sister program here on SABC. Now, news abroad. Members of Parliament in Britain are expected to vote later today in favour of an early general election called for by the Prime Minister Theresa May. May said she wanted to secure the backing of the British people for her Brexit negotiations with the European Union. May, who made the shock call for an early election on Tuesday, needs to bolster her narrow majority of 17 seats ahead of likely tortuous talks with Brussels that could reopen old wounds within her Conservative Party. The small Liberal Democrat opposition party is meanwhile hoping to emerge as a haven for pro-European voters, distraught after last June's referendum to quit the European Union. Experts say the main opposition Labour Party is in a weaker position ahead of the proposed June 8 election, bitterly divided over both its leftist leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and how to respond to Brexit. And the question, of course, is going to be a hard or a soft Brexit. We'll keep you posted on that one as well. Now, we are conducting a poll today, and that's our focus for this morning. We focus on minibus taxi drivers, and there you can see it's on your screen right now. The question we pose to you is, women's safety in minibus taxis a concern? 81 votes in, 75% of you are saying yes, it is a serious concern. 25% of you are saying no. Let's take a look at what you have to say about this quickly before we start our conversation here. Sipo says, morning news, no, they are not safe because late some taxi drivers tend to be rapists lately. They take their frustrations to the wrong people, says Sipo. These are some of your comments coming through. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. And right now, let's start off that conversation. Let's hand you over to Eben.
Yeah, Elvis, very good morning to you. Women, they're living in fear, with police following up leads as they investigate the rapes of several women picked up by men in minibus taxis in and around Johannesburg. Calls have been made for swift action to arrest the suspects behind a number of these rape cases in an apparent quantum taxi. This before community members argue they take the law into their own hands. Now, our reporter Griselda Lewis, she's with us here. I'll speak to her shortly. But she spoke to one of the victims who relayed the story of what happened on the day that she was violated.
I was leaving home to go to work, and I was in Westdean getting a taxi. This was around 9 a.m. when I got onto the taxi, basically. So the taxi stopped next to me, and then I got onto the taxi. So it was myself and then 3 guys in the taxi. It was the driver, another passenger in the passenger seat, and then someone else. I was basically in the second row, someone else sitting in the first row, but all of them were men. So what happened is we all paid as per normal, and then, okay, the one thing that made it a bit suspicious, but I only realized that later on when I look back, is that like that taxi, it was stopped by a taxi marshal not so long after I got on the taxi. And then the taxi marshal was basically saying to the driver, why is he picking us up? Because it's not his turn. So the taxi driver had an argument with the taxi marshal. So the taxi marshal said, we must get off the taxi and then he's going to call another taxi for us. So he did call another taxi, but then we still stayed in the same taxi because we had paid and we just, felt otherwise. So then what happened is, as they were arguing, the taxi I was in, it basically just swerved and drove away, whereas the other taxi we were supposed to get on was in front of it. So yeah, as the taxi carried on, I think it was not so long, I think 5 or 6 minutes later, that's when the guy who was sitting in the row in front of me, that's when he basically pulled out a gun. And then he said that I should stay calm. And then he said to me that all they want to do is to hijack that taxi. And then basically I should just cooperate with them. So yeah, then he told me that I must go to like the back seat of the taxi and I should like lie down, like flat on my back basically, so that no one would see what's happening. Then he came and then he sat at the back with me. But obviously I was lying down and he was sitting up straight like a normal passenger. But the taxi didn't like pick up any other people. So yeah, I was basically in that taxi for an hour and 30 minutes because at the point when they dropped me in Orlando East, it was like 10:30 because I remember I checked the time. So yeah, as the taxi's going, the first thing they did was, obviously they took my bag and then they took out all of the cards that I had in my bag. I had 3 bank cards. So they basically asked me to give them like the PIN codes to all of those cards, of which I just cooperated with them. I gave them all the PIN codes, but then before asking for the PIN codes, they asked me like, what's the balance in each card? And I told them. And then, yeah, they also just threatened me and said, if I'm lying about the balance, then that's not going to be good. But I told them that, no, I'm not lying. That's the balance in each and every card. So they stopped the taxi. I guess, I'm not sure, they were at a mall or somewhere you can withdraw money, because at that point, the driver and the guy in the passenger seat, they went out the taxi. I couldn't see, but I could hear. And then now the guy who was sitting by me, he moved and sat by the door of the taxi just to make sure that like I don't try to escape. So they went and then they came back and then they withdrew like whatever money I had from those cards. And then what happened is I had another card in my wallet, which was a colleague of mine's card, but I wasn't aware her card was there. So now they were asking me about that PIN, and I told them that that's not my card. So it just became an argument because I told them that's not my card. Even if you look at the names and surnames, they're not the same. So then that's when they were like, if I don't want them to kill me, I need to make a plan.
Make a plan, yes. The harrowing experiences of a rape survivor on one of the incidents that we've seen here in Johannesburg. Now today, there will be a march and a community meeting at Reiche Park against these taxi rape culprits. Now, I'm joined by Griselda Lewis, who's been covering this story here in Johannesburg extensively. Very good morning to you, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me, Ian.
Griselda, you've got some new information. You've been in contact with the police. What are they saying? What's the latest investigation and the latest information?
Well, you'd recall that there had been 7 arrests made in these incidents linked to the taxi rapes. And we understand that over the past few days, an identity parade was held. And it seems now 2 of the suspects have been linked to these incidents. They're appearing in the Lenasia Magistrates Court this morning. So of the 7 that were arrested, 2 have been linked to these incidents, apparently to 2 of the incidents that happened towards the south of Johannesburg. But I think of greater concern at this point, it certainly seems that the incidents continue despite these arrests.
Yeah, they do, which leads the question, you know, it's a difficult one to kind of get your head around. Are these sort of serial rapes perpetrated by a group, or are these random events with taxi drivers kind of feeling invincible a little bit?
Well, it's very difficult to say at this point because the clear indication is that despite the arrests that have been made, these incidents seem to be taking place. Just as you alluded to the march which will be taking place in Reiche Park, there's a community meeting that's also taking place this evening because the community now says there have been incidents that have taken place as late as last week. So, which begs to ask the question if whether those who are behind bars are the only ones who are perpetrating these crimes. It's very difficult to say whether whether this is a gang or these are just copycat incidents that are now taking place. But police are widening the scope of their investigation and are not ruling out the possibility of further arrests in these matters.
You mentioned the community, and you've been talking to the community. I'm sure there must be a fair element doing the rounds, women not wanting to travel at night or alone for that matter.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the numbers of people who use the public transport system in South Africa, it certainly is very worrying, in particular if you're talking about women who are now becoming victims when they're entirely dependent on minibus taxis, you know, to get to and from work. So when you speak to a number of these women, not just women but men, because this latest incident that took place in Reg Park involves men. There were several men in this taxi. They were taken to a bush where they were robbed and basically pointed with firearms. So it's not just women that are at risk of being attacked, it's also men. But when you listen to the conversations, including the one of the rape survivor, you get a sense that there is no trust for the public transportation system, well, particular in the areas that have been highlighted, the hotspots, but it certainly does spark fear in other areas as well.
Yeah, the community certainly raising the alarm. Tell us quickly about this march today.
Well, what we understand is that as a result of a number of incidents that have taken place in Reg Park from last week, the community is now fed up. They've called for a meeting with the South African Police Service and other stakeholders to address this, including the taxi associations. This will be taking place this evening. The residents are saying that they don't believe that much has been done. Yes, arrests have been made, but there certainly seems to be ongoing incidents relating to these quantum taxis. They've also said that a quantum taxi was involved in these latest attacks. So there's no indication whatsoever whether these are copycat incidents or it's a larger group of a larger gang that is involved in perpetrating these crimes.
Yeah, it's certainly very concerning that we don't even know the scope of this, the scope of these. Well, it looks like serial rapes, but it's happening unabated. In conclusion, your discussions with taxi organizations and so forth, are they talking about putting measures in place to deal with this? What's coming out of the taxi association?
Well, absolutely. When we started running the story, we really tried to look at where the hotspots were. And once those were identified by police in order to create awareness on where communities need to be vigilant, the taxi associations did take the step of ensuring that they increase their patrols in the routes that were identified. They did acknowledge as well that there are massive loopholes when you look at the taxi associations themselves. The vetting of taxi drivers, for example. How does one, if you're in a hurry and you're going to work in the morning, does one really stop and look at whether this is a taxi or not? Anyone can buy a quantum a minibus taxi, but to identify that, there's got to be some kind of logo or some kind of identification on that taxi that it is indeed, you know, one that does ferry people from the place where they are to where they want to go. So the taxi associations themselves have certainly a lot of work to do if you're going to curb incidences such as this, whether it's in Johannesburg or perhaps in other areas around the country where concerns have been raised about what's been taking place. So we do see now the Gauteng MEC of Community Safety, together with the taxi associations, continuing with their engagements on how to deal with the situation.
Yeah, we've heard about these engagements, and I'll be talking to Bafana Magagula from Santako shortly. I see he's arrived here already, but I want to ask you the general sense that you got while you were doing this investigation. Is there a sense of lawlessness that still remains in the South African taxi industry?
I'm not sure at this point if we can link it to that, because what we really saw, and in particular with our engagements, you know, with the taxi associations, is that this is an incident on its own which should be looked at in isolation. Number one, we're not sure whether these individuals are taxi drivers or not. Anyone can get behind the wheel of a minibus taxi, a quantum, and start picking up people. But as you know, the rape survivor had indicated, the minibus taxi that had stopped her, one of the marshals in that area had indicated to the person who was driving the taxi that you know, they were not allowed to be on that route. So it's very difficult to say at this point, you know, whether this is taxi drivers who are involved in these incidences. These are the things that we continue to probe the South African Police Service on.
Well, Criselda, we look forward to what comes out of today and, of course, going forward. But we'll be talking to the associations a little bit later in the show. Thanks for coming in. Great work, as always, by Criselda Lewis. You can watch that clip back on our YouTube channel or on our digital platforms, the taxi rape one, that is. Of course, we're asking you, are women safe on minibus taxis around South Africa? Do you feel safe on minibus taxis? Is a poll we've been running. This is what you guys are telling us now. We've got 81 votes in, 3/4 of people saying, nope, women are not safe. It is a concern, women's safety. And then you guys are tweeting us as well. Got a couple of tweets in. This one from Maya Sway says, Newsroom, hell yeah, I'm scared for my fiancé, my mother-in-law, my daughter, and other innocent passengers. Something should be done about this ASAP, says Maya Sway. Daneo says her story is sad, Newsroom. Yes, indeed, it is a sad story that we heard in a very touching interview that Criselda Lewis did a little bit earlier. Now, Sipho comes back, he says, no, they're not safe. What is even worse is that even she can report it to the police, he will get the bail. Yeah, it's that element Sipho is talking about. He says, there's no safety in our country. Now, seriously, it will come to a point where a life sentence is surely needed. Yes, Sipho, some are arguing for even more than life sentences in South Africa right now. These are your tweets. Keep it coming. Keep sending us your thoughts, your ideas, and tell us what you think on the stories, news in the day, and of course in the week. But let's go on social media quickly. Have a look at the hashtags. Of course, one of those hashtags that are getting lots of hits today is the Bram Park Fire hashtag. Human Rights Commission, Saga, Oxfam and Nedbank were some of the occupants of the building that caught fire here in Johannesburg. Of course, the fire was brought under control quickly by firefighters and no casualties were reported. Investigations as to the cause of the blaze is underway right now. Then, hashtag Vuwani. Residents are continuing to protest as they say their demands are not being heard by officials. Yesterday, 2 people died after they drove into barricades that were put up by protesters. Schools in the area remained closed. But yeah, that's also our question of the day. Now, today we say our final goodbyes to the 18-year-old progeria patient Ontlametse Palatse, who passed away last week. A memorial will take place in Hebron a little bit later today. There's the hashtag Ontlametse Memorial. Moving next door, Zimbabwe celebrated their Independence Day 37 years on with lively festivities. That's the hashtag. Lively festivities around the country. In international news, the search for the Cleveland Facebook Live killer Steve Stevens ended when it was found that the suspect who killed an elderly man while streaming live on Facebook, he's now killed himself in the US. Moving to the UK, British Parliament, they're expected to vote today in favour of an early election which could take place on the 8th of June, which is just around the corner, to Brexit. And how are we going to Brexit? Is it going to be a horrible one, or is it going to be a soft landing? And how's it going to affect us? I will talk all about those later in the week. Our picture of the day now comes from Tweezy. Tweezy ZA in his captions, this is sad. Hope everyone is safe and secure in the Bram Park fire. Interesting, this picture. Yes, no casualties were reported. That was the good news from this particular news story. Now, our comment of the day comes from Retumetsi Ntao, who says, you cannot go back in time and fix your mistakes, but you can learn from them and forgive yourselves for not knowing better. Tuesday, that's a hashtag that everyone's talking about. It's all about making a positive contribution. And yes, we're supposed to make mistakes in life, but we also have to learn from it. That's the, wonderful tweet of the day. Let's now go to the courts quickly and have a look at what you'll see in Port Elizabeth, where the murder trial of Christopher Panayotu and 2 others, Sinetembe Nambe and Zolani Sibeko, is expected to resume in the High Court after a 4-month break now. Now, Panayotu is, of course, accused of orchestrating the murder and abduction of his wife, Jade, more than 2 years ago now. The defense is contesting the admissibility of a video that was recorded between the former state witness, Lutando Siole, and Panayotu, where Panayotu allegedly incriminates himself. Now, Siole was declared a hostile witness after he refused to answer any questions from the state while he was a state witness, and the other accused in the matter died in hospital. Then here in Johannesburg, Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir and 4 others, well, they back in the Johannesburg High Court, where they are, of course, on trial, facing charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and the illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. It's an interesting story that's been in the news. We'll keep you updated as to how it developed. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll take a look at a different taxi rape story in another part of the country. Taxi rape, rape in general, safety of women on our public transport is what we'll be looking at. Don't go away.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Safety of women in taxis, that is our discussion point this morning. Now, 7 men who allegedly gang rape a woman, pelting her with bricks before setting her body alight, appeared in the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court. Now, it's alleged that the 34-year-old woman was walking home with friends at around 4:30 a.m. when a minibus taxi hit one of her friends not far from their destination in Tsepisong, west of Johannesburg. According to a statement that was released by the provincial SABC, an altercation then ensued between the 2 friends of the victim and the occupants of the taxi. The woman and her friend were later found by passers-by in a veld where they had been left for dead just off Impala Road in the West Rand early on Saturday morning. The victims succumbed to their injuries.
When I found her at the scene, she screamed and said to me, "Please release me so that I could leave this life." And I said to her, "No, let's pray." And we did that. When I took her to the hospital, she never spoke again.
Remembering the last words of her dying sister, Chloe Cindy is haunted by her sister Jeanette's harrowing ordeal. She wasn't the only victim. Her male companion, Lungelo Buthelezi, also suffered a gruesome death. In the early hours of Saturday morning, the 2 were reportedly walking when they were bumped by a taxi. A friend who was with them rushed for help. When he returned, they had allegedly accepted a lift in the same taxi to go to hospital.
The group of men allegedly transported the pair to a garage to get petrol and then brought them here, where they gang raped the 5-month pregnant victim. The 2 were then pelted with stones and then set alight.
The suspects were apprehended by members of the local taxi association after their friend had identified the vehicle. Inside court, the relatives of the deceased came face to face with the alleged killers.
I'm very angry and I feel like taking the law into my own hands. When I look at her killers, they're not ashamed of what they did.
I would ask the killers, what did these 2 people do to you that they deserve this brutal death?
Santako has called for the harshest possible sentence.
I would have asked the court instead of giving them the maximum punishment, to give them a death sentence, because we don't need such people in our society.
The pair will be laid to rest on Saturday in a joint funeral. The suspects will appear in court next Wednesday. Gillian Pillay, SABC News, Kagiso.
Now, for more on that story, on the line we have Gillian Pillay, our reporter who have been following this story. Gillian, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Can you take us back a little bit and tell us what actually happened on that fateful morning?
Elvis, as you know, this happened about 3 weeks ago now. As we see in our report, the pair, together with another friend, they were walking home. It's very vague around the events, you know, and that's what will come probably out of the bail application and the trial that will take place a little bit later this year. They were walking home when they were bumped by this taxi, and one of the friends then ran after the taxi because the 5 months pregnant lady, together with her male friend, they were injured. And the friend then remembered the number plate, and he then decided, okay, he's going to try and get help rather with the family of the pair. During this time, the taxi then turned around because they probably realized that the pair had now identified the vehicle, then offered them a lift to a hospital to get some sort of medical care, and then they stopped at a garage, we are told, where they then got petrol and took the pair to this mountainous area where they were pelted. First they gang raped the 5 month pregnant lady. They then pelted them with stones and then set them alight. What we do know is that the 5 month pregnant lady, both of them, they didn't die immediately. The lady eventually regained consciousness. She traversed over this very mountainous area where we went to. It really tells a story of the gruesome events that took place during the early hours of that Saturday morning. She then must have stumbled and fallen quite a few times. She was naked. Her underwear was on her head. She was burnt. She came across a church in that area made out of, galvanized sheeting. And there she got help. There she collapsed. They got medical care. Her sister ran to the scene, and that's where she really spoke her last words. She could then tell the paramedics that there was another person that was injured. She was able to relate what had happened and point out some of the perpetrators. But what really helped in this case, Elvis, compared to any other cases that I've covered, looking at the gruesomeness around and the senselessness around this particular killing, is that the friend had remembered the number plate and took that to the local taxi association in the area. And they managed to then trace the owner of the taxi, who then could say, my driver had the taxi during this time. And within a matter of hours of the lady and the gentleman being taken to hospital, they were able to round up the 5 suspects who are no older than 26 years old, Elvis, which was very sad when they stepped into the dock about 2 weeks ago to see that most of them hadn't had previous convictions. They were very, very young. They didn't really want to. Well, what had stalled proceedings on that particular day is that they didn't want to engage with the court around legal representation, a type of which gave off a type of arrogance towards the family who had been through such a harrowing ordeal in the wake of that arrest, Elvis.
Now, it is, as you indicated there, the taxi associations, they cooperated with the police in order to apprehend the suspects. Does it speak to the cooperation now between the police and the taxi associations in that area?
I think in the wake of that particular incident, which we all know it was quite harrowing, we'd heard previously in the weeks in the run-up to that incident that there were rapes with quantum taxis, but they weren't victims set alight. Yes, there was a victim that was gang raped in front of a 10-year-old son, but in this particular incident, it was a 5 month pregnant woman. She was gang raped, set alight. She did not die immediately. And I think that particular turn of events had really, really sent shockwaves through that particular community in Kagiso, in Tshepisong, where that incident happened. And I think many of the taxi owners who have wives, who have daughters, put themselves in the shoes of that particular family. And they took a stand that day. They took a stand to immediately arrest, the perpetrators who had committed such a gruesome crime. To me, if we could have that kind of a stand-up in all communities where men now take the stand, where men actually come forward, particularly in the taxi association. We know that the taxi association is such a crucial industry to our people. It's a public means of transport, but now one's safety is really at risk, particularly as a female, where when you get into a taxi, you don't know if you're going to get off alive. So this particular the gesture that and the efforts by the taxi associations together with the police really stood out in this case, because if they didn't take a stand, those 5 suspects would not be behind bars. What the owner of the taxi did tell us during that court appearance was when he got to the driver and the other 4 guys, they were still smelling of petrol, which really speaks to the mentality around this particular crime, Elvis.
Thank you so much for that, Gillian. We'll speak to Santako in a short while to find out what's the story there and what can be done. But just briefly, tell us what is happening with this case now.
I know that 2 weeks ago, Elvis, as I said, what was stalling proceedings was the suspects not being clear around legal representation. They're yet to appear for a formal bail application, and I think that is likely to happen before month end. We could see that bail application taking place, which will be quite a lengthy bail application. We saw all the community coming out in great numbers to that court on the day when they did make their first appearance out. So, like I said, it's likely to take, proceedings are likely to be in the form of a bail application in the next 2 weeks, Albert.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was Gillian Pillay, our reporter, on the line to us, telling us about that account of the woman that was gang raped, pelted with bricks before she was set alight, and her boyfriend or her friend was also assaulted and later died. Those are the things that's currently happening. We're asking you, of course, that question in relation to the poll that we're putting up for you here. Let's take a look at what you have to say on the poll. So far, we have 90 votes. 23% of you are saying no, women's safety in minibus taxis is not a concern, while the majority of you, 77%, are saying it is a problem. It's a serious issue. Let's take a look at what you have to say around that on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. Malibongwe says, I'm concerned, hence taxis are the only transport available until late at night and are the most used transport. This one from Just Human Torch says, taxi rapes occur because we have been desensitized against women being harassed by us as men in general, says Fox Future Deep. Sipo says, no. They're doing this because they know very well that courts will give them bail. They will eat nice food while we are crying outside, says Sipo. Jacob says there is a concern of safety, but women should also take responsibility. I don't condone rape, but indecency isn't good at all. What does that actually mean, Jacob? Well, some very interesting thoughts there on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Let us know what's on your mind. We'll read those comments as we continue. Let's now take a look at some of the front pages from the newspapers from around the globe. And we start off in Europe, where the Times reports that Theresa May is on course to win a majority, more than 100 votes in a June snap election, with Labour's pro-Brexit voters deserting Jeremy Corbyn. That May leads for election there. And moving to Florida in the U.S., the Miami Herald says that Venezuela's food shortages, inflation and the crumbling medical sector have become such a source of anguish that a growing number of young women are reluctantly opting for sterilization rather than face the hardship of pregnancy and child rearing. And then finally in China, the South China Morning Post reports that a U.S. strike group headed by the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson was still thousands of kilometers from the Korean peninsula only days ago, easing concerns that a military strike might be imminent against North Korea. Those are some of the newspapers from around the globe, but let's come home now and take a look at our Facebook page today. And we see there that the Hawks have denied bungling the arrest of the renowned prophet Timothy Omotoso. There, you can see it on the page there. Then a total of 669 people were killed in unrest that gripped Ethiopia for several months until authorities imposed a state of emergency last October. That's according to an investigation, a report presented to Parliament yesterday. That's the story there in Ethiopia. As you can see some of the pictures coming through on your screen. And finally, the man suspected of killing a Cleveland man and posting a video of the murder of Facebook fatally shot himself after a brief pursuit by Pennsylvania state police officers yesterday. There you can see him on the screen. That man died. Now you can find this and more on our Facebook page and the SABC News website. Now we'll take a short break, but after that, Eben will be engaging Santako on what is happening within the taxi industry. Let's take a break.
Welcome back with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, we're dealing with safety on our taxis. Now, according to a survey conducted by the advocacy group Action Aid South Africa, more than 2/3 of women who use public taxis and taxi ranks have witnessed violence and harassment. The South African National Taxi Council says it will take action against taxi rape perpetrators. Now, to talk to us a little bit about this, we are joined by the Chief Strategic Manager of Santako, Mr. Bafana Magagula. Mr. Magagula, very good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Eben, and to all the listeners of Newsroom.
Mr. Magagula, we asked our viewers, how do they feel if women's safety, especially, most of the taxi users in South Africa are women. We ask our viewers, do they think women's safety is a concern? A vast majority of them say yes. What do you say as Santako? Is it a concern for you, women's safety on our taxis?
At this moment, this is a very sad moment that we are going through as the South African National Taxi Council, where our business is being attacked by thugs, causing such concerns. As Santako, I think you've seen earlier on, our president has also been to courts trying to make sure that it is support to women, as we believe that we need every South African to support our business. Now, what I will say, we're also concerned about the women that are being attacked by these thugs. And we're not just sleeping, we're doing all the best we can to make sure that these culprits are brought to book.
The investigations are still underway, of course. You talk about thugs, you mention the word thugs specifically, but it seems as if quite a few of these thugs are sitting inside of the taxi fraternity. How are you going to deal with that problem that you guys are faced with that criminal element inside of the ropes of the taxi industry?
Well, look, maybe at the moment it's so unfortunate the way it is happening. It's like when you are stopped by a blue light and all of a sudden you realize there's gunpoints and your car is taken. Now, unfortunately, we cannot be in each and every taxi, and that would be our wish, you know, to make sure that we provide security for each and every taxi, to make sure that people inside are authentic passengers, not thugs as it is happening. We cannot deny the fact that Kumbis are being used as taxis to commit these crimes, and unfortunately, these people, you know, are well armed in terms of information, which routes to use and what time, and they know exactly their targets. That is now the women they really want on the spot.
We see robberies, rapes, they seem to go hand in hand. We now have 9 confirmed cases of these kind of rapes happening on taxis. How do you deal as Santaco? Tell us, what's your internal process to deal with this?
Well, our internal process, one, we have a program called Shokomela. We've got champions across the country who are on the roads every morning, every day, every evening, and they work jointly with our association patrol squads to try and deal with this in terms of security, patrolling the routes, and so on. But our future plan is government needs to get involved here and allow us these regulatory powers. We need the regulatory powers in order to properly regulate the industry.
In the short term, though, Mr. Magagula, in the now, it's clear that women feel unsafe. Women and children, their freedom of movement is being affected in and around the city, especially here in Johannesburg, but we see it elsewhere, as we've seen. It's a problem all over the country. How do we restore the freedom of movement of women and children through taxis immediately?
Well, we're doing our best to work hand in glove with the police, and the president is planning a meeting with the Minister of Police, because we want to look at why, when it is happening in the taxi industry, there is no call like there's a task team, you know, set up to actually be on the lookout for these thugs. If we can work hand in glove with the Minister of Police, get a team of police, not necessarily to work with us, but to use the techniques they use, you know, to identify
You're talking about
a
taxi unit, maybe, for that matter, that focuses specifically on taxis.
Especially at this time when we are experiencing this sad moment where thugs have now, you know, decided to get into taxis and use our taxis, you know, as a weapon to attack the women.
Are we going to see taxi ranks being better policed by both you and the authorities?
I think at this moment, if you really go into a taxi rank, you will see the difference. The president has launched a campaign with the Sonke Gender Justice that deals with the women, with the abuse or abuse against women. We are going from each and every taxi rank. We've been across the country. We still have a lot of, a large presidential program to continue this program, teaching our drivers how to take care of women. The women are a priority in our industry. We have a women desk as well, launched by the president of Santaco last year, July.
The vast majority of your customers are women that are using the taxis around South Africa to do their daily business. But that's where we leave it today, Mr. Magagula. Thanks for coming in again.
You're welcome.
Bafana Magagula is the strategic manager, the chief strategic manager of Santaco here in South Africa. Let's go over to Tsietse Monari now for the weather.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. We're expecting some clear skies for South Africa for the next couple of days. It's going to be quite lovely weather across the interior of South Africa. Warm to hot conditions coming up towards the Western Cape province and over the Northern Cape. And the rainfall very scarce for today as well as tomorrow. In fact, we're seeing clear conditions across much of the Southern African interior. A bit of drizzle coming in for Namibia, stretching up north into Angola, and also for Madagascar, and towards mainland into Malawi, the central part of Zambia, and up north into the DRC. That's the situation for today. Taking a look at tomorrow, you can see basically a similar pattern again is expected there of clear conditions, warm, lovely skies for the southwestern parts going up towards the northeast, and for us here in the Highveld. And then again, stronger chance of rainfall starting now along the northern parts of Mozambique, going towards Tanzania, the central part of Kenya and the DRC, and it's moving all the way towards West Africa. In terms of your temperatures, it's also going to be quite a warm day. You see a lot of darker red shade here towards the southwestern parts. That indicates hot weather that we're expecting over the interior of South Africa. And those temperatures moving towards the northern parts are expected to remain quite hot for places such as Niger, going towards Mali, and also along the southern parts into Nigeria. Do you expect hot temperatures over the next couple of days? The rainy conditions dominating the west coast. There's a 30% chance of rainfall moving along Liberia, covering the Cote d'Ivoire as well as Benin and Togo. But some of it, especially towards the central parts of the Central African Republic, do expect some partly cloudy conditions along the southern interior. Warm to hot weather expected for Egypt. For all those that are going to be in Libya, do expect cooler conditions, becoming slightly cold up north. Well, it seems like the wintry time does not want to shift quite quickly, so it's still remaining quite cool along those parts, although they're heading into spring, as we on the opposite end are heading into autumn and into winter. Take a look at the rainfall again, expected for tomorrow towards Uganda. And for all those that are going to be in the DRC, there's a 60% chance of rainfall there. And also do expect some partly cloudy skies and rainy weather to dominate just towards Somalia, coming in towards Eritrea. That's where I leave it for the weather. There should be more weather details later, so do stay tuned.
This Ford Kuga thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Kuga SUVs to catch fire, and it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
In 2016, our producer Nombuso Mahlangu spent a week with a champion, a fighter, a little girl with a giant heart. Untlameti Palate has now passed away. Tim Bophelong thought what better way to say the last goodbyes by reminiscing on this inspiring and courageous life story of the late energetic, perky, zealous and humorous Untla, who was popularly known as the First Lady. 18 years well spent. Thank you for touching many lives. What an inspiring human being you have been. Your purpose has been fulfilled and we celebrate your life. Bophelong salutes you. Rest in eternal peace. Farewell.
welcome back. Just gone 10 a.m. Central African time. I'm Kendall Mahamati. Morning, Kendall.
Very good morning. Very interesting stuff coming out of the world of sports, and I know we're going to be touching on that a little later.
Yeah, I quite like Chris Gale. I think he's underrated performer. We'll talk about him a little bit later.
100%.
But, of course, today we've been dealing with heavy subject matter, quantum rapes and rapes in general, violence against women in general on taxis. Of course, police are investigating the rapes of 9 cases, we are saying now, women that have been picked up in minibus taxis and then raped. We spoke in the first hour in general about safety. So, Kendall, we put together, we put forward this poll. And are you surprised with the numbers?
Not at all, because I've used taxis extensively myself in this country throughout my childhood and early adulthood. And these numbers saying that 78% of our viewers are saying, or 94 votes are saying, is women's safety in minibus taxis a concern? 78% are saying yes, it is.
Yep, and it is a concern. We've heard it from all stakeholders, especially at night. Especially at night. And you guys are tweeting us on this. Let's have a look at a couple of those tweets, of course. At night is one of the areas, of course, that's pointed out that women get into taxis and often find themselves in trouble.
Sipho comes in with, until government implements harsh decisions on taxi rapists or on rapists and killers, then we can say it is a safe country.
The lobby for the death penalty, Sipho. Is that true?
Sounds like
Nelson Mandela would never have that. Anyhow, what are some of the other tweets? This one from Godwin Baloy says, no, many taxi drivers are using fake documents. That is why they rape women. Taxi associations must employ themselves. It's so difficult to police, isn't it?
Yeah, no, very difficult. And Sipho comes in once again. Sir, there are no freedoms of movement in our country. Taxi unit and police must come together to deal with these rapists.
Yeah, Sipho. Jacob Perry comes and says, Newsroom, by indecency, I mean women should be mindful of indecent dressing, especially traveling at night in taxis and our streets. Yes, Jacob, in a perfect world, you should be allowed to dress and wear what you like and have the freedom to dress and wear what you like. Unfortunately, this is not a case in South Africa.
You know, case in point is what's happened in the past with women at taxi ranks and how they were cascaded for how they were dressing. Mayor Sway says, this is no copycats. This is a serial rapist on the loose. The police should work on this ASAP.
Wow, that is concerning. It's all in caps screaming at us that there's a serial rapist on the loose. Now, of course, that's a very interesting one. Keep tweeting us. We'd love to hear what you think. I'll talk to rape crisis in a short while, but also we ask this question of the day. People die now in the Bhuwani protests. It's not just schools being burnt down, and people are tweeting us on this question of the day as well.
100%. We keep them coming because we want to share with everyone what's being said. Alex Mutapa says, I really don't condone the killing of human beings. Really, that's wrong.
Talking about Bhuwani, of course, this one from Chigi Dimisa. He says, Newsroom, if the Malamalele people got what they want, why not give the Bhuwani people what they want as well? Chigi, should we just give everybody what they want, no matter the cost?
Sipho comes in as well. Sipho is actually quite categoric in his tweets, isn't he? He says,
and he's been tweeting quite a lot, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, he's talking on this as well. He says all political parties must participate in the Bhuwani situation instead of running around with blue lights.
Yeah, all should take action. Katlecho comes and says, Newsroom, people should be listened to. It's their right, it's their land, it's what they want, they govern, they voted. Why must we wait for the loss of lives? Why must we threaten the loss of lives?
Absolutely. Rodney Mushwana says, worried about the burning of schools, crashes of innocent people's cars. They have a right to do that, but in a responsible way.
Yeah. Your democratic rights should never infringe on the democratic rights of others. We have those responsibilities, Kendall.
100%. Rights and obligations need to go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a look at our top stories right now. Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba begins a multi-city roadshow of the United States in Washington tomorrow, where he will participate in the annual spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The DA has called for disciplinary steps against the ousted SABC COO Claudia Mutsuneng after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg today. We'll hope to take it live shortly after 11 this morning. Then 2 people have been burned to death and 1 other seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades placed on the roads by Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Well, those are the headlines at this hour. Let's go over to Kendall for sport.
Yep, and thank you very much. Quite a lot happening in the world of sports. We're definitely going to be trying to touch base on Chris Gayle getting his 10,000 runs. Make sure you catch that when we do chat about that. But in the meantime, this is here what else we got for you in the sports today.
It's Kimmich, and he's going all the way here. Marcelo, and he's given the goal, the hat-trick, and the 100 in the Champions League to Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo nets a hat-trick as Real Madrid go through to the Champions League semi-finals with a 4-2 extra-time victory against 10-man Bayern Munich. An Olympic silver medalist Annette Viljoen can't wait to get going in one of the biggest meets in South African athletics history.
That's why we put on the hashtag in Twitter, #FillUpPotch, to invite the people to come and watch, because the athletics is going to be world-class.
Gets the edge, ball goes down to third man, and there it is. That's now 10,000 T20 runs for Chris Gayle. What do they call it? The universal boss.
The inimitable Chris Gayle smashes a new record in cricket, becoming the first player to get to 10,000 T20 runs as Royal Challengers Bangalore beat Gujarat Lions in the IPL. All this and more we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin. Do stick around for it. Do also stay with Evan because he's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Very good morning if you have just joined us here on the Newsroom show. Yes, this top story right now is that the DA has now called for disciplinary steps against the ousted SABC CEO Claudia Mutsuneng after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg a little bit later this morning. Mr. Mutsuneng, who's been blamed for the financial mess at the public broadcaster, finds itself in reportedly plans to justify his controversial policies while at the SABC. Phumzile Van Dam, the DA's communication spokesperson, says Mutsuneng has no business addressing any issues regarding the SABC as he's no longer an employee of the broadcaster. The party says Mutsuneng should currently be in the middle of a disciplinary inquiry against him. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed support for Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba, who is going on an investor trip overseas. The two met in Pretoria on the eve of Gigaba's trip to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund meeting in the United States. They've reiterated South Africa's commitment to inclusive growth, poverty alleviation and speedy reform of state-owned enterprises. Ramaphosa says the trip forms part of efforts to showcase South Africa to the world.
We're very, very supportive of the minister and his team as they are going to showcase South Africa to the world. And particularly as he's a new minister, this is really great and exciting for us because the world will be seeing a new minister, the team that has always handled these matters, so it's great.
Two people have been burnt to death and one seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades placed on the roads by Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Protesting residents resumed their shutdown yesterday over an unresolved municipal dispute. Police spokesperson Moatse Ngwepe says they are investigating a case of culpable homicide. 6 other vehicles were damaged by protesters yesterday. Police also say they had made adequate deployments against protesters engaged in any form of illegal activity. Now, the Hawks have denied bungling the arrest of a renowned prophet, Timothy Omotoso. The unit was due to arrest him at an Easter crusade in Bloemfontein on Friday, but allegedly arrived after he had left. Omotoso, the founder of the Jesus Dominion International Church, is alleged to have sexually abused women congregants, some as young as 14 years old. The SABC's Special Assignment Program aired harrowing accounts of some of the alleged victims.
This charismatic pastor seemingly gone to ground. This as more victims come forward. The prophet is said to have lured them to his upmarket Umhlanga home, slept with them and refused to let them go.
You know, I was very young. I know there are girls who experienced this much younger than I was, but I wasn't mentally capable of understanding.
He took off my pants. I was wearing pants that time. And then when I stopped him, he said, I'm his girlfriend now, so I mustn't worry about anything.
The Hawks were hot on Omotoso's trail. His whereabouts confirmed at this venue for Friday's Easter service, where he was supposed to be apprehended.
We were told by the Hawks that we have to be on standby because there's going to be an arrest of a Nigerian pastor in Bloemfontein. And the Hawks personnel were traveling from the Eastern Cape to Bloemfontein to conduct that arrest. He was here on a Friday. Unfortunately, on Saturday and Sunday, he was not here because seemingly he received a tip-off that he's going to be arrested.
But the elite unit has poured cold water on allegations that they arrived too late.
We cannot always be the one to blame, like what people believe, that we're not there on time or maybe we dragged our feet. No, we were going there on schedule. And we were quite aware that the suspect somewhere, somehow, might not be there because of information that he had. But like I'm saying, our case is very strong and it's very tight. It's not bungled at all.
Police say they are taking statements from more victims and vow to have Omotoso behind bars before the end of the week. Attempts to contact his lawyer were unsuccessful. Griselda Lewis, SABC News.
Some news from abroad now. Members of Parliament in Britain, they are expected to vote later today in favour of an early general election called for by Prime Minister Theresa May. May said she wanted to secure the backing of the British people for her Brexit negotiations with the European Union. May, who made the shock call for an early election on Tuesday, needs to bolster her narrow majority of 17 seats ahead of likely torturous talks with Brussels that could reopen old wounds within her Conservative Party. The small Liberal Democrats opposition party is meanwhile hoping to emerge as a haven for pro-European voters distraught after last June's referendum to quit the European Union. Experts say the main opposition Labour Party is in a weaker position ahead of the proposed June 8 election, bitterly divided over both its leftist leader Jeremy Corbyn and how to respond to Brexit in general. Now, let's go back to our theme of women's safety and rape on the taxis. Many of the rape survivors only reported the case once the other cases of rape were brought to light by the media. In this instance, victims often don't know their rights or how the justice system works. Rape cases involve lengthy processes of physical examination and interviews even before issues are opened up in the courtrooms. Now, to talk about this and, of course, rape in general in South Africa, we're joined by Kathleen Day. She's the Director of Rape Crisis Cape Town Trust. Kathleen, a very good morning to you and great to have you with us here on the Newsroom show.
Morning, Eben. Thank you.
Yeah, we see many, of course, the numbers are just scary with regards to rape in South Africa. What's even more scary is the fact that many victims are not laying charges. Why do you think this is, Kathleen?
Well, I think one of the strongest reasons is that it's very difficult to do something like that when you're in shock and when you're traumatized, especially when you're traumatized by something that's been of a sexual nature, because it's very intimate and it's very private. For some people, it's actually taboo to talk about those kinds of things, but I think we all feel a natural reticence. So it's very difficult to come and to report to a stranger something of that nature, something that's happened. So those combination of feeling traumatized and of having to speak about something very private in a public kind of a way, those are the initial detractors. But as you mentioned, people often don't know what the procedures are. They don't know where to report, they don't know what's going to happen after they've reported it, and they aren't ready within themselves to negotiate those complicated procedures.
Kathleen, are we serious about tackling rape in South Africa, or are we just paying lip service? Last week, for instance, we saw an instance of rape really being trivialized in a cartoon, a black woman being raped wearing the national flag. Are we serious about coming to terms with the increasingly high numbers of rape in South Africa?
Well, I think when you look at what government has done over the last decade or so, there has been an enormous amount of infrastructure that's been put in place. So the family, child abuse and sexual offences units that have been put in place within the police, these special detective units, and of course the Tutuzela care centres, which are forensic units designed to not only do a thorough forensic examination, but also to offer treatment for the health risks associated with rape. And then, of course, government specialised sexual offences courts. These have also been put in place in some centres. But obviously there's a great deal more to be done. And if we really are going to be serious about it, we've got a very good foundation to build on. So if those three areas, your specialist detective units, your Tutuzela care centres, but most specifically your sexual offences courts, if those are upgraded, if those are expanded, if those are rolled out throughout the country, then we stand a much higher chance of dealing with this exactly the way that it needs to be done.
Do we have the infrastructure in place to deal with the victims of rape and giving them the support to be comfortable in coming forward and dealing with the perpetrators?
You've raised such a good point there. I think that the intertwining of the criminal justice process and the mental health aspect of rape is absolutely critical. So all of those centres, whether it's at the police level, policing level, at the health facility or at the court, what we call psychosocial care needs to be a really important component of that service that's delivered. And that's where your NGOs come in, NGOs like Rape Crisis and others around the country who work collaboratively in those spaces with officials to make sure that rape survivors know what's going to happen to them. That's an incredibly reassuring thing. If you don't know what's going to happen to you, it makes you that much more afraid and that much more reluctant to go forward. So if you've got the confidence, you know what's going to happen to you and you know what's required of you, and you have someone to give you the emotional support that you need, that minimizes what we call the secondary violence that often can disturb somebody when the officials within the system are not sensitive and are not offering that kind of information and psychosocial care, which often they're not trained to do or not in a position to do by virtue of another technical role that they must play. So I think also nurturing and supporting South African NGOs, making sure that they are well funded, making sure that they are well supported is a critical part of the whole process.
South Africa has one of the highest numbers, official numbers of rape in the world. Some say it could be double that number even with the unofficial numbers. Why?
So I think that there are a lot of factors that drive our rape rates higher and higher. They are in a way unique. Other countries don't have them. So there's the legacy of apartheid and the oppression specifically that men felt. Not having access to power, not having access to income, not having access to decision-making within the country, living lives of poverty in some cases, but also a culture of violence, using violence to achieve various aims and goals, whether they were financial or economic or even political, led our country to, in a way, normalize violence so that it becomes part of the everyday world of children and young people growing up, so that they don't even think that it isn't normal to respond in a violent way to conflict or to opposition. And of course, women and children are vulnerable to that. So women are around in the domestic environment, they're around in the traveling environment, as we spoke about earlier on the taxis. They are there and they are vulnerable to being preyed upon in a way, and they will be the recipients of this violence and have to deal with it in ways that are very, very difficult for, I think, often for men to understand. So I think that those things, those persistent understandings, the misunderstandings, the gender gap, if you like, are part of what we call rape culture, where we sort of grow up with rape being so much a part, children witness it in the homes, they witness it on television, it's part of the media, all the kind of commodification of sex and sexualized behavior. These are all very complicated forces that intertwine with one another to bring about an environment where rape, I won't say it's promoted, but it's sometimes condoned.
Or normalized, for that matter. Normalizing rape, Kathleen. Thank you very much for joining us today. Kathleen Day is the director of the Rape Crisis Cape Town Trust. Of course, today we're looking at rape specifically on our taxis that are causing a lot of nerves here in the Johannesburg area. 9 women have been raped on taxis in Johannesburg alone. We've seen incidents elsewhere in the country. Of course, we talk about normalizing rape. Rape cartoons, is that part of normalizing rape? Anyhow, tweet me if you have a view on that. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back right after this.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we were to come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Welcome back. Time for us to shift gears a little bit. A sexually explicit video, purportedly of an 14-year-old girl, caused a stir or sensation on social media since it surfaced on Facebook recently, with many people sharing the footage or asking for links to it even. Yes, that's where we live. But what are the rights of this young woman? She is still a minor. Would she be able to potentially sue you if you shared this video across social media platforms? Yes, we share things so easily today. To talk about this now, I'm joined by William Bird. He's the Director of Media Monitoring Africa. William, great to have you with us once again.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a very important story because it's so normal with what we do today on all social media platforms. It's getting the worst content you can. We've seen a guy being shot live on Facebook and so forth. How do you view what's going on? Let's talk about the sharing of content first.
So I think that we also need to look at this within the same context as the rise of fake news and clickbait fake news. Not fake news around the political games, but clickbait fake news, where people use these kinds of stories to really try and drive traffic to their websites.
Yeah.
So as we see those things rising, we can expect to see more and more incidences like this. And it's fine if you're making stuff up about public people. I mean, it's not fine, but it's far more understandable to pick on targets that have got resources and abilities to fight back. But when you're picking on poor, vulnerable children, as this does, it really is indicative of people that are scraping the bottom of the barrel of scum of humanity. So to be clear, if you have that video, you have a clip of that video, you have an image of that video, on any of your devices, you're guilty of a very serious criminal offense of the possession of child pornography or child sexual abuse material.
Talk to me about the legal framework and what people can sit in, but also I want to talk about the rights of the victim, in this case a minor 14-year-old girl. At 14 years old, you're allowed to make mistakes, and it's no one's right to share it all across the world, is it?
Well, this is one of the big challenges we face. You know, when you're young and you're a teen, and we don't know this to be sure, right? It's one thing if you are with your 14, 15-year-old boyfriend or girlfriend and you decide consensually to share explicit images of yourself. This is normal part of child sexual experimentation. And of course they're going to do that. You know, what we have to do is make sure that we guide our young people and help them understand the dangers of doing those kinds of things. It's a very different thing if it was you, Eben, buying, you know, saying to that girl, send me pictures of yourself and I'll give you airtime, which is what often happens.
Yeah,
right?
this is the world we live in now.
That's sexual exploitation, and that is a very different kind of scenario. So I think the legal rights of the girl in this instance, anyone who has that video, they are not only guilty of a sexual offense. If they share that video, they're guilty of another offense, but she can also take civil action against any of the people that do that. And we have seen some instances in the UK where someone was defamed and he took civil action against, I think it was a few thousand people. So it's possible. And it'll happen in South Africa.
So
whether she's got the ability to do it or not is a different matter.
You talk about, is it defamation specific? And we haven't got a landmark case in South Africa yet, have we?
No, not at the moment, but I think that hers would probably be a good one to go on. I mean, and not necessarily only defamation. You might go for other potential criminal charges that have violated her dignity.
What should people be thinking about when they forwarding content or liking stuff or sharing content for that matter?
I think the thing to think about with social media is always as if you're standing in a crowded room and if you've got a picture of someone, would you be willing to hand that picture out to everyone in that room and to say, yes, it was me, I shared it. If you're not prepared to do that, don't do it. Just don't do it. You know, if it's something that you find shocking or repulsive, think before you click share. You know, these things really have got very real life consequences for those that you're sharing about. So people might think it's fun to have it or shocking to have it, but think about the dignity of that young girl. It's appalling.
I want to talk about, well, elaborate a little bit and look at, because I'm sure insurance options are coming forward that, you know, especially for business, I would think, but also for individuals in against this kind of defamation suits. What's happening in that space?
Well, you can't insure yourself against that kind of thing. You know, you might try and suggest that you can, and maybe you'll get a policy that'll cover your legal fees if someone does decide to take legal action against you. But in this instance, the mere possession and sharing of that, you'd be guilty of 2 serious offences. So never mind the civil action against you. You're talking about jail time, 5 years for each of those different offences. It really is a very, very serious thing. And if you're talking about something that isn't child sexual abuse material, you still need to think very carefully about what you're sharing. And unfortunately, you know, people are going to have to probably learn the hard way when they get legal action taken against them. We see it with these mindless, gutless twit racists who spew nonsense and they think they're only sharing it to their idiot friends on Facebook. Little do they realize one of them goes, oh, look, this is completely offensive, and they share it.
Yeah, even on WhatsApp groups, these things are being shared all over.
You can't assume that it's not going to be going out there. So the simple thing is act on social media like you're talking to a crowded room.
Like you are live on television, for that matter, isn't it?
Live on television, speaking to millions.
Interesting. If you had one piece of advice to us using social media, at times a little bit frivolously, what would that be?
I think it's pretty much the same piece of advice. You know, think before you click share. It's not, you're dealing with real harm that can come to people and real damage that you can be doing. And the last thing you want to be doing is thinking, did I help hinder that person's dignity, or did I undermine them or devalue them just by clicking share?
Very, very interesting. Thank you. William Bird, Media Monitoring Africa's Director. He joins us periodically to talk about the things that no one else can. Thanks, William. Thanks for coming in once again today. Of course, yes, we're living in today's social media world. It's become easier and more rewarding, some say, to share false information about a person or a business. Though online content is occasionally moderated for pornographic or other inappropriate elements, most content is unregulated for defamatory elements. It's important, therefore, that consumers, sharers and potential victims better understand the landscape of online defamation. As you've just heard, now experts have warned but against individuals posting, sharing and liking defamatory material could land you in hot water. Now, to take this a little bit further, we are joined by Johannes du Plessis, who is a legal advisor at Risk Benefit Solutions, and he joins us live from Cape Town this morning. A very good morning to you. In short, Johannes, just explain what is meant by the term defamation for those who don't understand this.
Morning, yes. Defamation is any conduct which reduces a person's name or reputation in society.
Now, you know, as journalists, of course, we know this, and you can defame a person, but journalists normally do so knowingly. It seems as if in today's social media world, you can become complicit. Just talk us through the legal aspects of complicity by sharing.
Well, what social media users must remember is that they don't enjoy media privilege as professionals in the media does, and they very easily share information and posts and likes and even tag people in information about other people. And what they must remember is that the other people have rights to, in terms of which their reputation, status and good name are protected, and they've got the constitutional right to dignity and privacy as well. And this conduct can very easily infringe their rights. Also, in infringement of these rights, they can also be held liable civilly and criminally. In civil liability cases, which have not even happened very long ago, the courts have granted judgments against social media users for tens of thousands of rands for defaming other people on social media. And also, not so long ago, persons have gotten up to 3 years imprisonment for defaming other persons.
Johannes, just tell me some of the interesting cases that you've come across that maybe people don't know about, that could give people a sort of point of reference.
Well, for example, it's very easy for couples in relationships upon a breakup to defame each other. It's very easy for friends to defame each other. It's also very easy for persons to post information about businesses that make them unhappy or does not render a good service. The field for this is extremely wide.
Tell me quickly, you know that we live in the time of Twitter wars, tours and social media spats and Facebook fallouts and that kind of thing. If people call you a name, for instance, any name, what kind of recourse do I have if people call me names or you know, not offend or abuse me on a social media platform?
You can approach the court on an application to get an interdict against the person, and that interdict can be a prohibitory interdict, which prohibits that person from doing it again, and it can be a mandatory interdict as well, which the court grants and instructs the person with to remove that specific comment off of the social media medium. And also you can claim damages for the loss of your reputation and status, and the courts actually deem your reputation and status to be worth tens of thousands of rands.
So it's as simple as if you can just share a clip or a piece of information and you're criminally liable.
It is very likely, yes. And it's also very likely, as the courts have held, that even if you are tagged in a social media medium and you don't actively remove that tag, and that tag or that comment defames another person, you are deemed to be associated with it. So you actually have the obligation to actively and positively remove the tag and disassociate yourself with from that comment.
Now, what can you do to protect yourself from being held liable for things like defamation and the like?
Well, firstly, you should, as far as possible, not try and defame another person on social media. You should try and disassociate yourself from comments that actually defame other persons and businesses. And further, you can insure yourself for your liability. Some insurance companies do not insure comments about your religion and ethnicity and race, but the policies differ from insurance company to the other. And if you consult your broker and you inform your broker of which medium you use and what type of comments you indulge in, your insurance broker would be able to point out the relevant and best appropriate insurance policy for you.
Now, Johannes, are we heading into a future? They say, no, it will never happen. But are we heading into a future, especially in the legal framework, where social media is going to be moderated much more closely?
I do believe so, yes. It has been seen that social media had increased, just like other industries where legislation has been passed to moderate new industries that had developed. Social media is growing very rapidly, and it is very possible, in my opinion, that legislation or regulations be passed to regulate social media a little bit more strenuously. And that's in addition to these rights that I've already mentioned, which is already in place and which can already be infringed.
Johannes, in conclusion, are social media companies, parent companies, Facebook and so forth, are they doing enough to come to terms with this issue?
Many social media mediums do provide for channels and communication channels to communicate with them any defamatory comments and materials, and that social media medium can then themselves remove that comment as well, or stop it from being displayed. And I think that as long as they do it reasonably and as fast as possible, they are doing enough. And in addition to, they can also inform their users about their liability.
Well, Johannes, thank you very much. That's Johannes du Plessis, legal advisor at Risk Benefit Solutions. He's coming to us live from Cape Town. Yes, social media and the law, the noose is getting tighter and tighter. You can't just defame people, call them names or abuse them on social media. You are liable even for content that you share. Don't forget that. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more sport, that is, after this.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Welcome back. It's time for the sports. My name is Kendall Makamat and you're watching Newsroom. Now, top-seeded Brit Andy Murray, third seed Stanislav Wawrinka of Switzerland and fourth-seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal will all be in second-round action at the Monte Carlo Masters today. This after second-seeded Serb Novak Djokovic scraped through his second-round clash against Frenchman Gilles Monfils in 3 sets.
Djokovic was playing in his first clay court match of the year after recovering from an elbow injury.
How's that for a shot right there?
He faced a resolute Simon, who initially went toe-to-toe with Djokovic in the first set. But in the 8th game, the Serb secured his second break of serve and finally bagged it 6-3 in just over half an hour. Simon fought back in the second set. He saved 4 break points and finally clinched at 6-3 to enforce the decider.
Quite simply, that is a brilliant set of tennis from Gilles Simon.
The Frenchman continued to challenge Djokovic and served for the match in the 9th game. But the former world #1 drew on all his experience to break back and win at 7-5 to book his place in the 4th round.
In a year of mostly disappointments for Novak Djokovic, is this the turning point?
He was 3 points away, 2-3 points away from winning it. So I got myself out of that tricky situation, and that's probably the most positive thing I take from today.
Earlier, another Frenchman, 7th seed Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, was knocked out of the event by his compatriot Adrian Mannarino. Mannarino upset the French #1 in 3 sets. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
Now, despite the dispirited display against the tough Atletico Madrid, Leicester City's UEFA Champions League adventure ended in disappointment. This at the quarter-final stage last night, losing 2-1 on aggregate. In last night's other second-leg quarter-final, Bayern Munich were left aggrieved by some appalling officiating against Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium in Spain. Bayern lost 4-2 on the night and 6-3 on aggregate.
It was a night of milestones in the UEFA Champions League last night. Sergio Ramos appeared for the 100th time in the competition. Bayern's Iron Robben was brought down inside the box, and Robert Lewandowski stepped up and scored his 6th Champions League goal against Real.
It's level on aggregate, but Real still have the extra away goal.
Cristiano Ronaldo then leveled matters.
Gets a vital goal again for Real Madrid. His 98th in the Champions League. Munich. Don't forget, and that's rolled in. Amazing.
That was before Arturo Vidal was sent for an early shower, a very harsh decision against the Chilean. The match finished 3-all on aggregate in regulation time. It is said that luck favors the brave, and in extra time, Ronaldo, who was in an offside position, made it 2-all on the night. After scoring 100 goals in European competitions last week Wednesday, the Portuguese completed his hat-trick with another milestone, scoring a century of goals in the Champions League.
He's given the goal, the hat-trick, and the 100 in the Champions League to Cristiano Ronaldo. What a moment!
Real advanced to the semi-finals as they won the tie 6-3 on aggregate.
This is tough on Bayern. They're heartbroken now. And finally, Zinedine Zidane breaks into a grin.
Soon 8 will become 4.
Many didn't expect Leicester City to fly the English flag in the Champions League this season. But like when they won the English Premier League last year, the Foxes surprised all and sundry as they were the only English club left in the competition this season. After a 1-0 away loss to Atletico Madrid last week, they took on the Spanish side in the second leg of the quarter-final tie at the King Power Stadium. Saul extended Atletico's lead in the first half.
Schmeichel's beaten. Saul with the header.
In the second half, Jamie Vardy scored the equalizer to give the home side some hope.
And finished by Vardy. Leicester level on the night. They've been given some hope by Jamie Vardy.
But it wasn't enough as the tie finished 2-1 on aggregate to the visitors. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, Barcelona are confident they'll stage another dramatic Champions League comeback when they try to overturn their 3-0 deficit against Juventus in the Nou Camp in their quarter-final second-leg tie. Coach Luis Enrique in his last season with the Catalan Giants was quietly bullish, while former Barca defender Dani Alves, who moved to Turin last year, was relishing the prospect of knocking out his former teammates.
These are similar circumstances to the PSG match. We have to score fewer goals. We do not need to score that 4 that we needed against PSG. This time we only need 3, and considering that the opponent will likely have options and that they can score, our objective is to score 5 goals.
Our team studies our opponents very well and know the way to follow. I think that all my teammates know what we should do. We must make great strides, and we know that the effort will be worth it if we can beat Barca. I hope so. I think we're going to eliminate the best team in the world.
Bring it back home and have a quick look at the upset Premiership matches being played tonight. Now, here's what we've got in terms of upset Premiership matches. We've got only 3 matches on tonight. I've got 3 of them being played, and I'm hoping that we can bring them up. If not, we'll definitely make sure that you see them a little later. But here they are, 7:30 p.m. start for all 3 matches. SuperSport United against Mamelodi Sundowns. This is going to be a clash for the ages. Sundowns trying to carry on the momentum from last week as they bid to defend their title. SuperSport United have been slipping off late, trying to get back into the top 2 or 3. Cape Town City against Bidvest. That's the current log leaders, Cape Town against Bidvest. They've been trading top 1 places with them the entire season. That's going to be another clash to look out for. And then Polokwane City against Platinum Stars. This is at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium. Here's a quick reminder of what the log standings were looking like after the weekend's matches. You remember that Cape Town City had moved upwards from the weekend's action, sitting on 45 points and having played 23 matches, followed very closely by Kaizer Chiefs. And it's a matter of matches played. Kaizer Chiefs is sitting on 45 as well. Who would have said it would happen? It's happening right now. Bidvest have moved downwards on 44 points in 3rd position. Sundowns moving from 5th to 4th, and they're sitting on 41 points. It's getting hot at the top. This top 8 final, this race to the title is going to be really hot. Of course, I've got SuperSport, Arrows, Maritzburg United, and Polokwane City bringing up the rear in the top 8. Now, all roads lead to Potchefstroom this weekend as South Africa's creme de la creme of the South African track and field athletes go toe-to-toe, neck-and-neck against each other at the ASA Senior Championships on Friday and Saturday. Last night, I was joined by Olympic silver medalist Sunette Viljoen, who spoke to me about her expectations for this all-important athletics meet, as well as her plans for the rest of the season. Let's take a listen.
After Rio, it was just overwhelming to see what that medal have meant to South Africa, and to come everywhere being congratulated and being received as a national hero is very, very overwhelming. It gives me a lot of drive behind my training, and it's very good.
Let's talk about that silver medal that you got at Rio Olympics. I mean, as a 4-time Olympian, it must have meant a lot to you to get it.
Well, it takes a lot of dedication. That was after my 16th year of competition. I won my Olympic medal. A lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifices you need to do every single day. I trained 6 out of the 7 days to be a world-class athlete. But at the end of the day, to have walked away with Olympic silver and came so close to be Olympic champion. Yeah. But there's big things, more big things coming this year, going into London for the World Championships coming up. Very excited about that.
And a career as long and as storied as yours is, there must be lots of ups and lots of downs. Can you share 1 or 2, good and bad, that we can share with our viewers, and from your standpoint? Because so much has been written about you, and so much has been reported about what you said and didn't say, what you did and didn't do. Tell us, what has stood out for you in your career?
Well, my biggest disappointment by far was the London Olympic Games in 2012, where I finished 4th. I was world number 1 going into the London Olympic Games, and then I lost the Olympic medal in the 5th or the 4th round. The German girl won me. So that was my biggest heartache I ever experienced. So to come back in Rio in 4 years' time to win my Olympic medal was very, very satisfying for me. That is one of my biggest achievements in my career, is to be able to be called an Olympic medalist. Everywhere you come, you have a lot of respect for people, and it's very wonderful to be that Olympic silver medalist. That was by far my biggest achievement.
This is the weekend that's coming up now, the senior national championships that are coming up in Potchefstroom this weekend. All roads are leading to Potch. A lot has been said on Twitter, on Facebook, in the media in general about how big this senior national championships are. Can you tell us, what are you planning for this? Because you've had happy hunting ground there before. You threw a personal best there, I think it was 2008. Are you planning the same for this weekend?
Well, Potch is my home. It's my home for such a long time. I'm really excited to go back to Potch. I want to put in a really solid and a good performance. My aim for the weekend is 65. That is what I want to throw. That will be my furthest, I think, distance in South Africa. Right. The air is very thin in Potch, so the flight of the javelin is really, the javelin just flies in Potch. So I think if I hit it once, very good, it will really fly. But what makes me also very exciting about Potch is all my fellow countrymen that will be there. Wade and Caster, Akani, I can't remember everyone, but it's going to be wonderful to be able to compete in Potch. That's why we put on the hashtag in Twitter, Fill Up Potch, to invite the people to come and watch, because the athletics is going to be world class, and each event is going to bring its unique, special spirit to Potch.
No, 100%. And before we go too far down the road as well, is Potch is also leading up to Eugenie. Like at the end of May, you're going to be there. You're one of the headliners for Eugenie. How does that make you feel? And how does Potch fit into your bigger preparation for that, as well as the championships in London?
Well, I saw it the other night on the internet for the first time myself. I was making the headlines, and I sent it immediately to Munya, and I told him, well, fill you in the javelin. So Potch is part of my preparation leading towards it. It's the first Diamond League of the year that we will have. We only have 5 Diamond Leagues this year. It's far from home, it's in Oregon, but sometimes you have to fly across the world to represent your country and to live out your potential, your God-given talent. And I'm very excited to go there because I put in a lot of hard work after Rio, and I'm in the form of my life, so I really want to take on the world and make a good statement there.
Yeah, no, very interesting chat. Definitely we're going to be trying to stay close to her throughout the entire season. Now, something that's been very close to Newsroom's hearts is the environment and the state of environment. And that's why Evan and Tsietsi are standing by to chat about this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Kendall will be back in the next hour giving us another look at sport. But Tsietsi is here. We've got a little bit of time to talk about wetlands. Yes, the important thing, wetlands. They thought of as swamps, riddled with pollution and disease, or even unused land that needs to be developed for the better use for all of us here, mankind. It's because of this mindset that in the past, wetlands have often been degraded, burnt off and redeveloped. In fact, research states that 64% of the world's wetlands have disappeared in the 20th century alone. Now, Tsietsi Manare is here to tell us how important wetlands really are.
Yeah.
Morning.
Yeah. Good morning. Yes, and quite a shocking stat, that 64%. If you actually compare it to from the 1700s, it actually amounts to about 87% of the wetlands that we used to have through the Industrial Revolution that just went diminished.
You can't get them back. You can't get it back, can you?
No, absolutely not, because they've been destroyed. I mean, it takes quite a long time to actually form the types of soil and type of plants that you'd get into a wetland. And
talk to the picture here and tell us what's the role of a wetland in an ecosystem.
Yes, this picture is actually one of the grimmest ones that I could get. You know, I wanted to get one of those swamp things looking like with the disease and with mosquitoes and insects and so on. But it couldn't do justice, because even this, as ugly as it is, it actually still looks good for a wetland. Yeah, and this is what people used to think of them as dirty and murky and really things that need to be changed. But actually, this is what wetlands also look like on the opposite end. This one is in South Africa, actually. It's Mangaliso wetland in KZN. And they're actually very beautiful, and they are extremely important for our ecosystems for a couple of reasons. You know, the fact that they natural habitat for plants, for animals, and even humans rely on them for multiple purposes.
especially in a dry country like South Africa, even more important role.
Yes.
It also deals with cleaning natural water sources and so forth.
Yes, going back to the dry aspect, being the operative word, dry, in that in South Africa, these wetlands can actually store water during summer period and actually sort of release it bit by bit in winter when it's getting dry and when the vegetation is really struggling. So we have a long-term dry period here in South Africa, so we really need as many wetlands. We need to protect the ones that we have, so that we can actually sort of recycle this water, comes up from, because it acts like a sponge almost.
Yeah, it's got to keep the equilibrium of all the water resources.
Yes, the balance is always kept with these wetlands, and they really magnificent here in South Africa.
Why has so little been known about this important resource until now?
Yeah, most of the research and scientific or academic research depends on how much budgeting goes into that field. And if you look at wetlands, it's something, like you said in the beginning, it's something that we've always wanted to redevelop, something we never regarded as important.
Yeah, let's build some flats there.
Yes, so we never really learned much about them. That's why now the information on it is only about how dirty they are, or sometimes how much pollution they cause. But remember, they have so much dirt because they're actually keeping some of the dirt to purify water and make it cleaner for us to use, for plants to breed in, like like the wattled crane. They actually need wetlands to breed.
And what should people be doing at home? How can we contribute to make it better?
At home, it's a little bit difficult because it's like everybody has a wetland right next to them. Because of the new laws now, the REMSA laws state that you cannot develop very close within proximity of a wetland. But the most important thing is try not to litter, get mining activities as far away as possible from wetlands, because those are some of the biggest culprits, with acid mine drainage going into the river systems.
Tsetse Manare, it's always great to have you with us and to give us a different view, a different perspective on, not just the weather, our ecosystem. We are ultimately part of an ecosystem, and wetlands are a very important part of that. We should all look after this heritage, as this will be the gift to the next generation. Tsetse, thanks very much. Always nice to have him with us. We're going to take a little break now. I'll be back at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock with another update. We understand that Mr. Mutsuneng will also have a news conference soon, and we'll try and take that live for you as soon as it comes in. See you shortly.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday. In 2016, our producer Nombuso Mahlangu spent a week with a champion, a fighter, a little girl with a giant heart. Untlameti Palate has now passed away. Tim Bupilong thought what better way to say the last goodbyes by reminiscing on this inspiring and courageous life story of the late energetic, perky, zealous and humorous Untla, who was popularly known as the First Lady. 18 years well spent. Thank you for touching many lives. What an inspiring human being you have been. Your purpose has been fulfilled and we celebrate your life. Bupilong salutes you. Rest in eternal peace. Farewell.
This Ford Cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time. This is the final hour here in the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. You're on Channel 404 until 12 o'clock. Now, this morning we focus on police that are investigating the rapes of several women that were picked up by men in minibus taxis. Now, we're conducting that poll, Kendall, and we're putting it up for our viewers.
Putting it up for our viewers, and we've actually put it out on social media as well. We want to know from you, do you think that women's safety in minibus taxis is a concern or not?
Well, let's take a look at that poll there. 100 votes in thus far. 79, almost 80% are saying yes, it is definitely a concern, Kendall.
No, 100%, and 21% say no. I wonder which minibus taxis they use, and maybe they use them at different times.
Yeah, let's take a look at what you have to say around that on the question that we posed to you. You've been tweeting us this morning. Jacob Piri says, by indecency, I mean women should be mindful of indecent dressing, especially traveling at night in taxis and on our streets. Well, that's Jacob's thoughts on that. Shouldn't women wear what they want? That's the question.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a continuation of another tweet where he mentioned indecency. Sipo says, sir, there's no freedom of movement in our country. A taxi unit and police must come together to deal with these rapists.
This one from Godwin says, no, many taxi drivers are using the fake documents. That is why they rape women. Taxi associations must employ themselves.
And Liquid Track Solutions says so many applications for smartphones. I'm sure an app could be developed to protect the public in taxis. Hashtag taxi, hashtag rape.
Liquid Track, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We should use technology in order to safeguard commuters.
Everything
in taxis.
Available we should use.
We should actually do that. They should actually have some cameras in the taxis as well that can relate back to the station command or wherever they at the taxi rank itself. But we're also conducting a poll. Of course, as you know, 2 people have been burned to death after their vehicle hit barricades that was placed in the roads by the protesting Buwani residents in Limpopo. That's why we're asking that question, Kendall.
Yeah, we want to know what your views are on that incident, that occurrence where 2 people died after hitting barricades as people were protesting in Buwani.
Let us know on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, but let's take a look at what you have to say.
Untusabuikano says, we're very angry as a country. We often resort to extreme measures to solve even not so complicated issues. We need to calm down.
This one from Collins and Sailor says, an armored military vehicle is parked inside the yard of a family in Saxonwold when it should have been utilized in Buwani. Well, there's another story there talking about the Saxonwold, and of course you know who's staying there.
Absolutely. Government must stop service delivery in Buwani because it's a waste of time. Schools were just rebuilt yesterday. Now they do it again. I like the cross-pollination of different issues that our viewers are bringing to this.
All right. This one from Alex says, I really don't condone the killing of human beings. Really, that's wrong. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba begins a multi-city roadshow of the United States in Washington tomorrow to participate in the annual spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The Democratic Alliance has called for disciplinary steps against the ousted SABC COO Claudie Motseneng after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg this morning. And 2 people have been burned to death and 1 seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades that was placed on the roads by the protesting Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Those are your headlines. Before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Barring us having to go to the press conference that's being held later on, this is what we've got planned for you in the sports. Quite a lot happened in the UEFA Champions League as well as in other sporting programs. Good morning to you. This is what you can expect.
And he's going all the way here, Marcelo, and he's given the goal, the hat-trick, and the 100 in the Champions League to Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo nets a hat-trick as Real Madrid go through to the Champions League semi-finals with a 4-2 extra-time victory against 10-man Bayern Munich. An Olympic silver medalist, Sinette Viljoen, cannot wait to get going in one of the biggest meets in South African athletics history.
On Twitter, full approach to invite the people to come and watch because the athletics is going to be world-class.
Gets the air, ball goes down to third man, and there it is. That's now 10,000 T20 runs for Chris Gayle. What do they call it? The universal boss.
The inimitable Chris Gayle smashes a new record in cricket, becoming the first player to get to 10,000 T20 runs as Royal Challengers Bangalore beat Gujarat Lions in the IPL. All this we've got for you at 11:35 in more detail. Do stay with us and do stay with Elvis because he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The Democratic Alliance has called for disciplinary steps against the ousted SABC COO Claudie Motseneng after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg shortly. Motseneng, who has been blamed for the financial mess the public broadcaster finds itself in, reportedly plans to justify his controversial policies at the SABC. Pumzile van Dam, the DA communication spokesperson, says Motseneng has no business addressing any issues regarding the SABC, as he's no longer an employee of the broadcaster. The party says Motseneng should currently be in the middle of a disciplinary inquiry against him. Let's see if the press conference is up and running. And well, there's some live pictures coming through, but it's not up and running as yet. As soon as it's ready, we'll go there live, so you have to stay tuned. Now, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed support for the Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba, who is going on an investor trip overseas. The two met in Pretoria on the eve of Gigaba's trip to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund meeting in the United States. They have reiterated South Africa's commitment to inclusive growth, poverty alleviation, and speedy reform of state-owned enterprises. Ramaphosa says the trip forms part of efforts to showcase South Africa to the world.
We're very, very supportive of the minister and his team as they are going to showcase South Africa to the world. And particularly as he's a new minister, this is really great and exciting for us because the world will be seeing a new minister, the team that has always handled these matters, so it's great.
To see you again, are you good? Now, 2 people have been burned to death and 1 seriously injured after their vehicle hit barricades placed on the roads by Vuwani residents in Limpopo. Protesting residents resumed their shutdown yesterday over an unresolved municipal dispute. Police spokesperson Moatseng Ngwape says they are investigating a case of culpable homicide. 6 other vehicles were damaged by protesters yesterday. Police also say they had made adequate deployments against protesters engaged in any form of illegal activity. Now, analysts have called on Police Minister Fikile Mbalula to explain how the former AU Commission chair, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, qualifies for presidential protection, since she's never occupied office of the president. They accuse the state of giving her preferential treatment in order to unfairly elevate her status as a presidential candidate.
Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma crisscrossing the country on her political campaigns for the high office. The controversies now following her. The use of the state top presidential unit driving her around have raised eyebrows. The police minister says a high-profile security came as a result of threats on her life. But security experts are not convinced.
This is a matter decided through a process referred to as RIMAS, the Risk Information Management Administration System. And there are two types of persons that identify through this system, and those are people who occupy public office. So it's a very present thing, and of course it does provide for former presidents, former deputy presidents, and their spouses.
Political analysts say though Dlamini Zuma, as former AU chair, qualifies for VIP security, the high-tech presidential guards raise questions. The cost of state security while campaigning for a political office will have to be explained to taxpayers.
When you do have these presidential security protocols, they tend to be very expensive. If you go on a campaign, the bill is going to take on a quantum leap, precisely because you have to be in so many places than the normal person who has come back from retirement.
Dr. Fikeni says it will be impossible for a political party to foot the bill of security. Montlengani Dipoko, SABC News, Pretoria.
Following the 61st session of the Commission of the Status of Women, CSW 61, at the United Nations headquarters in New York from the 13th to the 24th of March 2017, the focus was on women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. And the sub-theme and the emerging issues that was explored was the empowerment of indigenous women. This annual event sees representatives of member states, United Nations entities and non-governmental organizations gather to review the progress towards gender equality and the empowerment of women. Identify challenges, set global standards and norms and formulate policies to promote gender equality and women's empowerment worldwide. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined by Dr. Amelia Malka. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and welcome.
Morning, Elvis.
Now, first and foremostly, I would like to touch on the role of the Commission of the Status of Women. What does it play and what is the significance thereof?
Well, main significance is that it is a global policy formation body. Plus, it forms part of the United Nations, specifically within the economic and social components. It was established in 1946, so it's been going 71 years now. And its key emphasis is on driving gender equality as well as empowerment of women. It also serves in terms of proposing recommendations on promoting women's rights in a few key areas, whether that's in the political sphere, the social sphere, civic, as well as on the educational component. So those are some of the key drivers on promoting women's rights.
What has the successes been thus far, seeing that the organization has been in force for so many years?
Well, part of it is about having these annual events. So every year, annually in New York, they spend 10 days reflecting on, exactly as you said, looking at identifying the challenges, looking at what the progress has been. And if you look at some of the outcomes coming through in terms of this year, key emphasis is in terms of driving through on gender empowerment legislation, looking at fulfilling SDG, so Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which pertains to women's equality, through by 2030, which is where we want to achieve our sustainable development goals.
How is the world of work changing for women, and what are the implications for women in general?
I'd say, first of all, it's not just about the world of work changing for women. I'd say the world of work is changing for the world.
For the world, yes.
So some of those aspects include climate change, so looking in terms of some of the opportunities within the greening environment and green space. Another key element is in terms of digital innovation. And part of that, where women are actually on the back burner, is about inclusion to technology and inclusion in terms of being afforded those opportunities within the digital space. And that came through very clearly in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. So the further behind we lag in that development, it means that we penalised in terms of moving forwards in the future. Globalisation is another key area, as well as mobility and also increasing employment in the informal sector. So we know that even from our own South African perspective, that driving entrepreneurship is one of the key values. So those, I'd say, are the 5 key domains in terms of where the world of work is changing. And if we go back into it specifically from a woman's point of view, there are some components which have stayed the same as key issues, so being the fact of equal work and equal pay for work of equal value. And globally, the average still persists that women are underpaid by 23% less than their male counterparts. And which I'd like to contextualize. If we look at that in a year, it means that for a quarter of the year, or 3 months, women have to work a quarter extra than a man. So it means that they are perpetually held back in a sort of lifetime of their economic cycle.
I want to touch on a very important issue, and that is the focus and the empowerment of Indigenous women that was introduced in the 65th session. Why has this group of women been singled out, and does that talk to the informal sector?
It certainly talks to the informal sector, and from an Indigenous population, globally, the estimates are between 370 to 375 million Indigenous people. In 2007, the UN specifically had a declaration of human rights for Indigenous people. So in these components, it's about raising awareness of this specific group. They have experienced marginalization. They have experienced being invisible. If we look in South African context back to the Khoi and the San people, that those are some of the areas where people are almost discriminated against because of that intellectual property that they possess, but because they own land in maybe areas which other people want to take possession of, that they have been denied some of those rights and in effect, I'd say, discriminated against for those resources.
What were some of the recommendations coming out of the report, especially when it relates to Indigenous women?
Well, they emphasised that it wasn't just on the Indigenous factor, but some of the key elements are increasing accessibility to resources, promotion of technology, and specifically in the digital space. The estimation is that I think in terms of population that women are probably around about 200 million women are behind the curve in terms of the digital learning and environment. Going back to the informal economy, in sub-Saharan Africa, approximately 89% of employed women work in the informal sector, which shows the importance of this space. But in that space, what is also important is in the formal sector, you've got access to particular benefits, whether that is pension, sick pay, other components. But in the informal sector, you don't have access to any of those types of benefits. So it's looking at how we can have more of a woman's collective voice in terms of organizing their capability to formulate unions so that that voice is more prominent, closing the participation gap. So on average, in terms of working age population, we've got 75% of men in working age population who are working, but only 50% of women. So ways of trying to close that gap are being able to provide childcare support, being able to provide things like parental care. So it's supplying this form of benefits in order to enable women more economically.
Women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. Here at home in South Africa, the President as well as the Finance Minister is talking about radical economic transformation. Does that assist the plight of women here in South Africa, you think?
I do think it does, and I also think that, again, from a South African perspective, we've got a lot of enabling legislation, and if we can implement that legislation, that's where we're going to start enabling our women further.
Is there any recent developments here in South Africa that points to that?
Well, actually, yes. I'd like to talk a little bit, May, about Equal but Different. So this is a new publication, which has just recently been published by Dr. Judy Dlamini, and it focuses on some of the work that she's done looking at the intersectionality between race, gender, class, and how women are moving forwards, specifically within the leadership space, and dealing with issues in terms of how you manage your career, how you get access to mentorship, both in terms of a structural and informal as well as the formal components. Remaining competent, being visible, so developing strong characteristics, and also importantly getting the buy-in from men within those environments to open the door for women to come into those opportunities.
Doctor, I thank you so much for joining us here in studio once again.
Thank you.
Always enlightening to have you here and tell us about women's empowerment in the workplace.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Amelia Molka joining us here in studio. Now we'll take a short break, and after that, when we come back, we might go to the press conference with Mr. Claudio Matsoneng and hear what he has to say. Stay tuned.
From the moment you start your day. Good morning, everybody. It is 6 o'clock. We are there for you.
You want a guarantee from the leadership that we should not be leaders who will steal. I'm prepared to give that guarantee that we should not steal from our people.
We bring your morning into perspective.
This is the reason they keep putting fees up. They're not getting enough money.
We'll make sure that you get the full story. The police officers from specifically Moffat View Police Station, they support these brothels. What have you found upon your investigations on this matter?
I cannot deny those allegations.
And you can count on the weather team with expertise.
Join us live at 6 a.m. daily.
Our theme today looking at women's safety in taxis. Now, according to a survey conducted by advocacy group ActionAid South Africa, more than 2/3 of women who use public taxis and taxi ranks have witnessed violence and harassment. The South African National Taxi Council says it will take action, against taxi rape perpetrators. Earlier, we spoke to the Chief Strategic Manager of Santaco, Bafana Magagula.
A very sad moment that we are going through as the South African National Taxi Council, where our business is being attacked by thugs, causing such concerns. As Santaco, I think you've seen earlier on, our president has also been to courts trying to make sure that there is support to women, as we believe that we need every South African to support our business. Now, what I will say, we're also concerned about the women that are being attacked by these thugs. And we're not just sleeping, we're doing all the best we can to make sure that these culprits are brought to book.
The investigations are still underway, of course. You talk about thugs, you mention the word thugs specifically, but it seems as if quite a few of these thugs are sitting inside of the taxi fraternity. How are you going to deal with that problem that you guys are faced with that criminal element inside of the ropes of the taxi industry?
Well, look, maybe at the moment it's so unfortunate the way it is happening. It's like when you are stopped by a blue light and all of a sudden you realize there's gunpoints and your car is taken. Now, unfortunately, we cannot be in each and every taxi, and that would be our wish, you know, to make sure that we provide security for each and every taxi, to make sure that people inside are authentic passengers, not thugs as it is happening. We cannot deny the fact that Kumbis are being used as taxis to commit these crimes, and unfortunately, these people, you know, are well armed in terms of information, which routes to use and what time, and they know exactly their targets. That is now the women they really want on the spot.
We see robberies, rapes, they seem to go hand in hand. We now have 9 confirmed cases of these kind of rapes happening on taxis. How do you deal as Santaco? Tell us, what's your internal process to deal with this?
Well, our internal process, we have a program called Shokomela. We've got champions across the country who are on the roads every morning, every day, every evening, and they work jointly with our association patrol squads to try and deal with this in terms of security, patrolling the routes, and so on. But our future plan is government needs to get involved here and allow us these regulatory powers. We need the regulatory powers in order to properly regulate the industry.
In the short term, though, Mr. Makagula, in the now, it's clear that women feel unsafe. Women and children, their freedom of movement is being affected in and around the city, especially in Johannesburg, but we see it elsewhere, as we've seen. It's a problem all over the country. How do we restore the freedom of movement of women and children through taxis immediately?
Well, we're doing our best to work hand in glove with the police, and the president is planning a meeting with the Minister of Police, because we want to look at why, when it is happening in the taxi industry, there is no call like there's a task team, set up to actually be on the lookout for these thugs. If we can work hand in glove with the Minister of Police, get a team of police, not necessarily to work with us, but to use the techniques they use, to identify
You're talking about
such culprits.
A taxi unit, maybe, for that matter, that focuses specifically on taxis.
Especially at this time when we are experiencing this sad moment where thugs have now, decided to get into taxis and use our taxis, as a weapon to attack the women.
Are we going to see taxi ranks being better policed by both you and the authorities?
I think at this moment, if you really go into a taxi rank, you will see the difference. The president has launched a campaign with the Sonke Gender Justice that deals with the women, with the abuse or abuse against women. We are going from each and every taxi rank. We've been across the country. We still have a lot of, a large presidential program to continue this program, teaching our drivers how to take care of women. The women are a priority in our industry. We have a women desk as well, launched by the president of Santaco.
Meanwhile, the ex-Hawks head, General Benning Ntlemeza, won't let go. His lawyers have confirmed that he will petition the Supreme Court of Appeal to overturn a High Court ruling that set aside his appointment.
Ntlemeza was a no-show at the Hawks Pretoria headquarters on Tuesday morning. It was widely reported that he would be reporting for duty.
We want to close the chapter, really. The reports will have came from yourselves, as the media that is coming or not coming. He has not communicated anything to us or the minister for that matter. So as far as we are concerned, the matter is closed.
Ntlemeza's appointment was set aside by the High Court in March. It further ruled that regardless of any possible appeals, he must vacate his post. Fresh on the job, Police Minister Fikile Mbalula used the court rulings as basis to fire Ntlemeza. The Police Ministry insists that there is no confusion about Ntlemeza's status. It says he is no longer Hawks head, and the Directorate is now moving on with new acting head, General Yolisa Matakata.
She's the one who is holding the fort now. And we are supporting her, and I think this is what the communities of South Africa, the citizens of South Africa will want to know, that this ship is moving. It has not grounded anywhere.
But Ntlemeza is not backing off, set on approaching the Supreme Court of Appeal. His lawyer also claims due process was not followed in terminating his employment.
All
we know is that our client is working, and he actually loves his work, and is grateful that South Africa gave him the opportunity to do the work, and he'll exhaust all his rights in terms of the law.
Ntlemeza's lawyers say he will report for duty next Monday when his leave ends. Sipho Sturman, SABC News, Pretoria.
Authorities are investigating the cause of a fire that erupted at a Johannesburg 5-story building yesterday afternoon in Braamfontein. The building was home to the Human Rights Commission, SALGA, Nedbank and Oxfam, among others. No casualties were reported.
I don't care. Listen to me. Listen to me. Okay, please stand here. I'll bring them to you. This building is coming down. Coming down.
Running for cover, at 2:15 p.m. a fire erupted in this 5-story building. The Human Rights Commission, SALGA, Nedbank and Oxfam SA among the tenants. Some employees managed to salvage their belongings. Others not so fortunate.
The people that has cars, can you just wait a few minutes?
Emergency services were quick to put out the blaze.
It looks like the fire started on the 5th floor, and we went in and then looked if whether there are any people that are still trapped in the building, and there were no people, and our crew started dealing with the fire, extinguishing the fire. That was well allied, and then currently we have actually managed to extinguish the fire. We have contained it and just looking at sparks of fires that are coming at different places in this building.
No casualties were reported. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the Democratic Alliance has called for disciplinary steps against the ousted SABC COO, Claudie Motseneng, after it emerged that he plans to hold a news conference in Johannesburg today. Motseneng, who has been blamed for the financial mess that the public broadcaster finds itself in, reportedly plans to justify his controversial policies at the SABC. Phumzile van Dam, the DA communications spokesperson, says Motseneng has no business addressing any issues regarding the SABC, as he's no longer an employee of the broadcaster. The party says that Motseneng should currently be in the middle of a disciplinary inquiry against him. Let's now see if we can go there live. There's live pictures, as you can see, coming through. Let's see what's happening currently there. There's a lot of singing by a number of people in the front. We've seen Mr. Motseneng entering the venue there, and it seems like there is now the crowd in front there dancing and singing and bringing him into the room where the press conference will take place shortly. It'll be very interesting to hear what Mr. Motseneng has to say. But right now, it's all about dancing and singing. That's what's happening currently at the press conference of Mr. Claudie Motseneng. The press conference is to address
all the pending and pertinent matters with regards to a number of issues, and we're going to see what those issues are. One of them is the response to the financial statements and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee on the fitness of the SABC board. He's also going to talk about the SABC financial state from 2012 to 2016. That will be very interesting. The 90% local content that we currently still are with, the security vetting for SABC staff, as well as the multi-choice contract. And then, of course, the dismissal cases, the dismissal case of the SABC, and also the new SABC board members. This is what he will talk about as we speak, and they're getting ready to bring Mr. Motsoeneng on right now. Let's go there live.
Thank you very much, Mr. Everything. I don't know whether you are resuscitated by 90% or it comes natural. Pamela. We are about to start. Comrades, fellow artists, production houses, music legends present, organized formations in the arts fraternity, guests, members of the Fourth Estate, protocol observed. You are all welcome to this media briefing. My name is Ernest Muikangwa. I am responsible for this program today. I want to start this briefing by echoing an analysis once made by Frantz Fanon that sometimes people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they are presented with evidence that works against that belief, the new evidence cannot be accepted. It would create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable, called cognitive dissonance, because it is so important to protect the core belief. They will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with their core belief. With those words or quote from Frantz Fanon, I wish to call upon organizations that are here. They have requested to present messages of support to this particular journey and or a battle that we are fighting. Today is going to be very interesting. You don't have to worry. Today, it's very interesting. And it's evident because we see lots and lots of media houses present today. I would start with the president of MASA, Musicians Association of South Africa, Teboho Sitatu.
Dumelang South Africa. Le kae? Viva Comrade Hlaudi, viva. Viva! Repelele Hlaudi, repelele. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a great day because justice is being done. For the first time, we're going to hear the side of story that we should have had a long time ago during the probing into the SABC matters. It's been very criminal to allow for one side of story where you call on everybody to say anything against a man, and then you don't call the man to come and hear their side of story. It's serious injustice, unconstitutional. And it goes to the core of the flawed probe into the SABC matters. Because it's obvious, even a child could see it's a one-sided story to suit a particular narrative. So, you see, I was saying to somebody, actually the president of the Roadies Association yesterday, we were having a brief meeting and I was saying to him, for the first time I was actually feeling a breath of fresh air. That when I listened to Comrade Chris Malikane, the new advisor to the new finance minister, I thought, wow, finally we're getting somewhere. Finally, we're gonna have brave men and women, true leadership. And as I was relating that story of what I heard about radical economic transformation with the president, which the president is emphasizing upon, I said, maybe we're getting somewhere. Only to wake up this morning to the news of the ministers distancing himself from his advisor. And I think, the advisor was upfront to say, I've written the paper in my own personal capacity, but the things that he was talking about white capital monopoly that I know most people in South Africa don't want to hear because it's the truth. That thing exists. That is why after 22 years, we're still lagging behind. We've done some good progress, but we could have done better. And for as long as we don't change our thinking and the way we do things and stop being apologetic about transformation and bringing about economic emancipation to the majority of South Africans, then we are fooling ourselves. We're getting nowhere slowly. So Hlaudi is the man who actually epitomizes that. He came into the SABC, he breathed some fresh air. We've had COOs and CEOs who have PhDs, but ke magwala. They are so scared, they don't want to rock the boat. We don't want leaders like those. In fact, they should go away. They must resign. They know who themselves, who they are. But we want leaders with, if I was not on live TV, I would say with balls, who would take the bull. We want people who are not scared. You see, when we talk about white capital monopoly, we're not talking about necessarily white people alone. We have black people who perpetuate this thing. Because for as long as themselves and their families have been taken care of, they don't care about the majority of people that suffer in this country. So it's not a racist. So white people, please don't feel uncomfortable. That thing exists, you know it, and we need to work together as a nation to deal with it. It's like racism, I always have arguments with people. I say, black people, why are you the first people to defend racists? You are a victim of racism, but the moment somebody tells it like it is, to say 99% of white people are racist, you are the first people as black people to say, no, but you can't say that. That is nonsense, and that must stop. But because of time, because I don't want to steal the show, the man is here. My hero is here. So because of time, I'm going to say, MASA, the Musicians Association of South Africa, is known for standing by Hlaudi. That has not changed. That will not change. We are behind him 120%. And those who want to get rid of him, they've got another thing coming. Whether within the SABC or outside the SABC. He's a resident of this country, and he has made a mark, and is a man that you love to hate. Thank you very much.
Love or hate him, but you can't ignore him. The people's COO. Let me take this opportunity to call upon Jobe Ndate Sithole. Let me take this opportunity to call Ndate Sithole. Ndate Sithole. He has requested 60 seconds And he must not be provoked by Teboho to go an extra mile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Mandla. Matla. Aibuye. I-Afrika. Izwe lethu. Siyabonga, Program Director. On behalf of South African people, the African people in particular, those who believe to be in South African in Africa, those who believe that we, people of this country, we deserve to be treated as a human being. We deserve to be treated as the people of the soil. You know, this is also me, I'm counting 28 years. We've been fighting for this 90%, which is happening now. And can you imagine if I died 22 or 25 years ago? So we are saying, people they've been coming SABC, about degrees, ngena SABC, about professor, advocates. But abenzanga lutho, sichaba samudimo, abayisa litho, you know? And then now this is so bad and it's painful. It's like this thing you're going to hide. Sesingene manje kuizwe elingenzi kahle financially ngoba upresident ushintshe lapha nalapha. Okokuqala enikushintsho. This is not the first time the president is shuffling. And the same guy, Hanswano, there's a lot of noise. He was kicked out and then there was no noise. And then now, why now? Good people who have to be wise. Yes, we know. Dollar buys everything. Money buys everything. Devil buys everything. But good people, we are saying that Mutsening, Tupaki and that Terloni Ion. Tupaki and that. Ye Tupat, Mutsening Viva, Mutsening Viva. We are saying in these 28 years, before it, asishinji. Tina that's why some saw potu baba ngoba kwaraikotwa ezodumo zakiktwa out. We people lesalwela ezodumo, you know, and people live with the bazot manje. Why we fighting now? We didn't start this now. I started long ago. That is why we decided to even start the Musicians Union of South Africa, because we could see that we're not respected. Yes, we know there is money involved. That, yeah, if now they are not playing our music, European music, no, we're going to pull out. We're not going to sponsor SABC. SABC, we're behind you. We're going to support SABC. Yes, we know we are moneyless. We don't have money, but we have us. We have us, the people of South Africa. So, people, please, Nama TV, I assimilate SABC, support SABC. The thing is, Batalani ama license goes SABC na ebakwetu ezokwazi ukukhuthala. It's not to say we are pushing SABC down. We pay our TV license, SABC will continue to support us. Even nalaba bangenayo, the new board, please don't try to change this, guys. Otherwise sinizobona inyoka iphuza umhluzi.
Thank you, thank you. Members of the Fourth Estates that are here, worry not, because tomorrow your papers are going to fly off the shelves. The people's COO is here. No retreat, no surrender. Ke kopa bitsa ntate Blondi Magen. Asenna ba ikopetse ba re re tswa tselena re tsamaile le ntate Motshweneng. He's us, we are him. Ha tsebe rhetoric, he implements. Ha buika transformation fela wa ifila a touch. Ntate Blondi Magen, the legend himself.
Suzabala Zuliliswe, Suzabala Zuliliswe, Suzabala Zuliliswe, Sozabala zelelizwe. Sozabala zelelizwe. Sozabala zelelizwe. Sozabala zelelizwe. Thank you, Commander. Opa.
Thokozani Bukoko. Good afternoon, leadership, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here today. It's good to set the record straight today. Yeah, for 22 years, we have been discussed. Yeah. Everybody talks about us. Nobody talks to us. And a man comes along who talks to us. A man comes along who feels that this suffering with regards this music sector has to stop. Just like Zuma, when you want to make a really impactful change, and then you have people rise up against you. You can rise against Laudi, you can rise against Zuma, but the majority of the people that put Zuma there, they will make a decision if he's coming down or he's staying there. No people, no foreigners from other countries will come and tell us how to live our lives in this country. We don't do it in Britain, we don't do it in Netherlands, so please don't do it in our country. Be nice visitors, be nice guests, and we promise we will give you the best service that we can. So I'm saying to the new board at SABC, we are not those children that you have controlled and spoken for anymore. Mr. Naidu, I don't even know what you're doing on that board, because you are the rotten potato that was on the previous board. Now the same rotten potato wants to be in this board. 1. 2. I don't know why we are SABC's first partner, but we don't have representation on that board. Yes. These things have to change, and they're not going to change tomorrow. We're not asking for change. We are making the change. Yes. We are instructing. Yes. We, the music makers, are writing this script, and all of you are going to listen. From the president to the lowest, you're going to listen to us. Let me tell you, if you don't listen to us, you'll have to stay with your overseas musicians, your Beyoncés, and all those guys. You must play them. But I say to you, and this is from the constituency of music makers, if you go that way, you reduce 90%, just actually take us off your radio. Yes. Take us off your radio. Don't play us. Play Beyoncé. Export this weak rand and destroy the country. We know that we will die as paupers. We are ready to die as paupers. You take us off your radios, you have done nothing for us. In fact, we have struggled for all the sectors in this country to be where they are today. And while we were struggling, we forgot our sector. Pelile logo. You are going to listen to us, and you're going to do just what we say you must do. Thank you. Amanda! Amanda! Irima kwala acheche. Acheche le muna huya. Irima kwala acheche. Acheche le muna huya. Huyaruna. 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 Oh, huyaruna. Oh, huyaruna. Huyaruna. Babilu tata kopili. Amanda.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, legend, and Tate Blondi Machene. I I always tell my forces that Hlaudi Motsoeneng, he may not be certificated, but he's very much educated. Vumani bu. Ereking ke motsotso ona. Ndate Babsi Mlangeni hantse ang atamela. Kere ho di South Africans, the moment of truth has come. The moment of truth has come.
Yeah. Oh. Good afternoon, South Africa. Din Sheville. Lena Kilisheville. Yeah. Yeah, na le batho ba ratang a ba ntshwara ka re ke sefofu. Ha ke tsebe why. Vuso ntshwara ka re ke sefofu. You know, when it was announced by Tate Motsoeneng, announcer ka 90% local content. Yeah, at last. Something's happening to the musicians of this country. Because knocking from one door to another, trying to get this thing right, icon. Hukena ministers of arts and culture, nothing is happening. I remember after Ntate Claudius announced this, the secretary phoned me, and then a regular office in high. Kaya khanna kaya ding. And when I got there, I told him our problems as disabled musicians, that we are always at the end, at the tail end of the queue. Because when you are disabled, people always want to think for you, like the old regime used to think for South Africa, black South Africans. People always think for us, we don't have minds to think. And yet, guys like Steve Kekano who are advocates. How many of you are advocates in this world? Right. Now, when we spoke about our problems, an organization, SADMA, which is South African Disabled Music Association, they've recorded a lot of disabled musicians around the country, but their music is not heard over the radio. Now, you see, that's a problem. Now, I hear here and there, but when this thing was announced, at least I never gave you as a pauper. Lena, I'll have something in my pocket. But managing is my to reverse this thing. That's the time that hi. And there's about anybody to lead us, the white sticks. Hi. Yeah, Manda. Now, I'm saying this, that please, people, you must know that there's no difference between you and I. Luna Liabona. I'm sure I wrote a lot of songs, more than many of you here in this hall. And Mudimu unga se sing, aune se sing utohona we pidisa. Now that is what Tade Claudi was saying. Ari, I'm going to support you, Babsi, and your sector as much as I can. Utswara jwalan Tade Claudi. Uska tloel. Disabled fella. Retlawe manokeng. Retlawa le teng le wena waya. Phambili ntatlhaudi phambili. Phambili ntatlhaudi phambili. Hey, tada.